and just completely lifted our trailer off the ground and basically put it through the back of our church. Me and my wife and my sister-in-law, my little daughter, they were trapped inside the trailer and I had to pull them out.
Hurricane-spawned tornadoes tear through sections of Louisiana. Hello, this is Day Watch. I'm Donna Kelly. Bob Kane is off today. Hurricane Andrew, already the costliest storm in U.S. history, keeps adding to its bill. Damage estimates by some accounts are $15 billion and climbing. 17 storm-related deaths are on record. Just a short time ago, President Bush announced he is clearing his schedule today in order to travel to Louisiana and survey the hurricane damage there. He toured storm-ravaged southern Florida on Monday, while stressing the federal government intends to do all it can to aid those victimized by Hurricane Andrew. The president says this natural disaster threatens to overwhelm the resources of both private and public aid organizations. Andrew is heading deep into Louisiana's Cajun country at this hour. It's drifting north with maximum sustained winds of about 100 miles per hour. The hurricane center came ashore about 7 hours ago, 55 miles southeast of Lafayette. While it struck only a glancing blow at New Orleans, it unleashed a cluster of destructive tornadoes on the town of La Plaza. That's 20 miles west of the Big Easy. Terrence Jackson has a report.
Witnesses believe a trio of tornadoes raked a 7-mile hole through Reserve in nearby La Plaza, Louisiana, destroying or seriously damaging everything in their path. Half a dozen homes in this subdivision were leveled. Several were ripped off of their foundation.
The house back here flew from this side of the road all the way across the street into two houses there. We have a truck back here that looks like a beer can now.
What do you think when you see all this?
I mean, what do you say? I mean, this is people's lives. They've been living here, 10, 15, some of them 25, 30 years, and everything they have is virtually gone. What do you say?
But everyone who lived here escaped with their lives, even the lone couple that was home when the storm hit. Dennis Morrow is thankful his son, daughter-in-law, and grandbaby evacuated this house in time. From what you've seen inside, could they have survived this if they were here?
No way. It's amazing. It just looks like everything was sucked into the middle of the house. They would have been sleeping facing this way. The air conditioner force actually drove. This thing is stuck into the back of the headboard.
Unfortunately, at least 33 people were injured when their homes were ravaged. But doctors say, surprisingly, only 3 were critically wounded.
Most of them were injured by being tossed around. There were several trailer parks and other facilities which were destroyed. Most of them were tossed around the trailer park. Some of them were injured by debris from collapsing roofs of solid structures in a subdivision not far from here.
Michael Day and his 5-year-old daughter were trapped inside a trailer behind a church.
As we were going out to the church, the tornado hit and just completely lifted our trailer off the ground and basically put it through the back of our church. Me and my wife and my sister-in-law, my little daughter, they were trapped inside the trailer and I had to pull them out.
That was Terrence Jackson of CNN affiliate KHOU reporting to us. Want to tell you that our Flip Spiceland says that maximum sustained winds are now at 75 miles per hour. Morgan City, Louisiana was in the crosshairs when Hurricane Andrew stormed ashore. CNN's Mike Capps is standing by with an update from there. Mike?
Well, Donna, Morgan City came out lucky if you consider injuries. Not very many serious injuries reported to police here, although they're still looking through neighborhoods. But we wanted to show you what nature does to nature. Now, these are trees that were uprooted behind the Civic Center here in Morgan City, which served as an evacuation place. Impressive, but consider this. These trees are behind a wall in the Civic Center of about 30 feet in height. Now, we put our satellite truck, let's turn and show pictures of the satellite truck here. We put our satellite truck behind this wall for the protective nature of the wall. And then you can see over here, if we look to our right, how high this wall goes. It's 30 to 40 feet. We put the truck behind it. We put our vehicles behind it as a block for the winds, the hurricane winds that we knew would be here. And still, we had such devastation. Oak trees uprooted, palm trees thrown about, and some CNN vehicles received a little bit of damage. We've also been told that the roof was torn off of a hotel here. Sheet metal from buildings were thrown about. But still, miraculously enough, no serious injuries. As I said, police continue to search through homes, going through individual houses to make sure that their initial assessments are correct. But for now, the city officials here in Morgan City consider themselves extremely lucky for the damage, not just for the damage, but the fact that there were no serious injuries, apparently. Donna?
All right, Mike Capps from Morgan City, Louisiana. We thank you for the information. We'll take a quick break here on Day Watch. When we come back, Flip Spiceland will have the very latest for us on Hurricane Andrew. You stay with us. We continue to watch Hurricane Andrew for you. Here's Flip Spiceland.
I want to give you the latest position and the latest coordinates and the latest data on the hurricane. It now is drifting not so much as a drift, but an actual movement to the north at 8 miles an hour. Top wind speeds are down at about 75 miles an hour. These are the coordinates: 30.5 north, 91.6 west. There you can see the eye of the storm well onshore. Geographically, this places the storm about 25 miles due west of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida tells us that the storm is expected to weaken over the next 24 hours, obviously, with it moving over the landmass. Take a look at our composite radar loop, and we will show you the storm spinning onshore. And let me give you a little bit of the data that we have been collecting here this morning as you watch the eye of the storm move up here, just between Lafayette and Morgan City, just about through New Iberia, actually a little bit to the east of New Iberia. And you can see the storm continuing to drift on to the north, placing the center of it now just to the west by 25 miles of Baton Rouge. Now then, we've already seen extremely severe weather, mainly out of the tornado activity that is being spun off by this hurricane. About a dozen tornadoes have hit. As Donna told you earlier, in Laplace, they have reported 36 injuries due to tornado activity. The most recent tornado to touch down just about 15-20 minutes ago in Centerville, Mississippi. Rainfall amounts are extremely heavy. A place called Hammond, Louisiana has reported almost 6 inches of rainfall already. Baton Rouge, Louisiana has reported more than 3 inches of rainfall in just the last 3 hours. Wind gusts up to 55 miles an hour still being reported at Baton Rouge. In New Orleans, Louisiana, we already have 3 inches of rainfall on the ground, and it's still coming down. We now take it to Miles Lawrence at the Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida, and we'll talk with him. Miles, we wanted to ask you a little bit about how much longer, that's the question they're talking about here in the studio, how much longer for the hurricane intensity onshore, and how long till the tornado activity begins to die down?
The Andrew is a minimal hurricane now with winds of about 75 miles an hour. It's weakening, and we expect that we'll drop to a tropical storm in the next hour or two. And at that time, we'll take down the coastal warnings for a hurricane.
How about the tornadoes?
Now, the tornadoes, it's possible that they could continue all day today, accompanying the storm as it moves northward and then perhaps a little later on northeastward. So there is a risk of tornadoes spreading northward today, and also the heavy rainfall that you mentioned will be spreading northward along the path of the storm.
It's done pretty much exactly what the National Hurricane Center said it would do. I mean, I hate to say it's an easy storm to predict, but you guys have done a great job on this one, haven't you? Go ahead.
Well, the track of the storm was a smooth track, and when the tracks are smooth, we usually do a pretty good job of predicting these tracks, but that doesn't always guarantee that the next one is going to be smooth, and when the storms do things that are unexpected, we don't make perfect forecasts. So, yes, we did well on this one, but that's no guarantee for the future.
Well, thumbs up, Miles. Stick with us. We'll be talking with you later in the day, I am sure. We'll have more weather for you coming up a little bit later in the day, and at some point we're going to try to tie this all into the national weather picture and let you know what's going to happen with this hurricane as it continues to drift to the north when it becomes the remnants of Hurricane Andrew. We'll try to get that in for you a little bit later. Now back to Donna.
Flip, thank you. A short time ago, you saw here.
Live from Channel 9, Central Florida's news leader. Marty Salt, Ken Tendall, and Danny Trainer with weather. This is Eyewitness News at noon.
Hurricane Andrew delivers a punch to Louisiana, striking the south central part of the state and barreling northward. The storm is weakened, but at 75 miles per hour, it's still considered deadly and ripe for spitting out tornadoes. Andrew is now centered a few miles south-southwest of Baton Rouge, the state capital. Good afternoon. Our top story again today, Hurricane Andrew. Its winds have diminished sharply, but it is still a very dangerous storm, knocking out power and dumping sheets of rain.
Flash floods and high winds have closed highways around the state. Still no report on casualties or damage. Florida News Network meteorologist Dennis Felkin is live in Baton Rouge with this. Dennis?
Hurricane Andrew is finally beginning to loosen its grip across much of Louisiana, especially our location in Baton Rouge. During the early morning hours, wind gusts were well over 100 miles per hour, but still, now with daylight and we're beginning to get a chance to go out and see the damage that Andrew has created, it is very clear to us that it is not nearly in the league of that occurred over South Florida a couple of days ago. Still, we found one small Louisiana town which took a real beating from Andrew. This was as far south as Hurricane Andrew would allow us to go, the town of Plaquemine. The normally serene town was literally being torn up before our eyes. This is a scene repeated throughout every town we run across in southern Louisiana. Trees as old as 100 years snapped like twigs, pulling down the power lines, knocking power out through the entire community.
I think our biggest problem right now is going to be the electrical part of it, getting electricity back on.
Trees were everywhere in this town, littering the streets, crashing into homes, and pulling down the power lines. Andrew's fury only ripped the shingles off this rooftop and yet demolished an entire car wash just a few blocks away. Few could believe the experience.
I'm 19, I only been through a couple of hurricanes, but I ain't never seen it get this bad.
Plaquemine is a well-organized town and wouldn't allow Andrew to catch it by surprise. But Andrew had some surprises for our photographer Dave Herring and myself. The storm had changed course for Baton Rouge, and we ended up driving right into the eye wall, the most dangerous part of the storm. The 100-mile-per-hour wind gust while driving over the Mississippi River will be something neither one of us want to do again. Now that occurred for us just about 2 hours ago. Since that time, winds have gone below hurricane force. The weather pattern is going to be slow to calm down, though. We'll expect gale force winds for the remainder of the afternoon, and there is still a threat of tornadoes as Andrew breaks up over the inland sections of Louisiana and eventually Arkansas. That's the situation right here in Baton Rouge. I'm meteorologist Dennis Felkin.
All right, thank you, Dennis, for that report. Well, Hurricane Andrew first moved inland at Morgan City in southern Louisiana.
The high winds and rain hit Morgan City after skirting the coast during the night. The hurricane uprooted trees, caused considerable damage there. Andrew also played havoc in New Iberia. Evacuees had to battle heavy rains to get out of the area. At one point, a gas line broke at a hotel, causing fear of an explosion. And in Lafayette, the biggest Louisiana community in the direct path of the storm, there is a lot of damage and no power.
And President Bush announced just a short while ago that he will be heading to Louisiana this afternoon to see the damage there for himself. We will have more live from Louisiana later this half hour.
For thousands of South Florida residents, it's another day of just trying to get by. The death toll is now at 17. But officials fear that will most certainly rise.
Rescue officials say they are leaving some bodies in the debris for now while some health questions are answered. Meanwhile, looting. How much of a problem is it in Miami? Ross Cavett is in South Florida and he joins us live with that story. Ross, what do you know?
Well, it's a grave situation. The looting problem actually is getting worse as the days move on. This day number 3, as people gradually begin to run out of some of life's essential materials. Our eyewitness news cameras caught some of the looting firsthand. It was really quite a graphic scene. And as you'll see from some of this video I'm about to show you and the people we talked to, some of the stuff that was being looted is not considered life's essentials.
No, not every man for himself. Every family for themselves. Yeah, we're going to speak for the family.
Yeah, they got TVs and everything. What's that telephone for? Where'd that come from? That's hungry? Most of these people are stealing, stereos, VCR, TVs and stuff. When they're stealing food and stuff, we mostly give them a break.
Fine if you're going to stay here, or are you going?
Stuff like that, you ain't gonna feed anybody a phone.
So I will give you all my time.
With the oil, it's ridiculous.
I'm hungry, sir. I don't have no candles, no money, no nothing for my folks kids, sir. So you're trying to find somewhere to buy some candles or something for my kids, sir.
Well, there are a lot of people that are simply trying to stay alive and provide for their family, but still more opportunists that are trying to make a buck off this whole thing and loot stores to get whatever they can. We've heard varying figures on the arrests for looting and curfew violations. There's a 7 to 7 curfew still in effect for all of Dade County. Anywhere between 200 and 400 people have been arrested, depending on your sources. The National Guard today has set up roadblocks into some of the most seriously damaged areas to prevent anybody who might be trying to loot from getting into those areas, letting only the people that can show they have business in those areas move south into the South Dade County. That's the situation here. Back to the studio.
All right. Thank you, Ross. Well, many neighbors just north of Miami were spared the worst of the storm.
Though people did suffer damage, one of their main goals now is to help those who are in greater need. Richard Froelich is now in South Dade County with more on how relief efforts are going there. Richard?
Well, Ken, we're talking about an effort by many people in Broward County, which was less severely hit, to help those here in Dade to survive, really, in many cases. Today in Broward County, they collected food and goods and medicines at a number of the malls. Here's what it looked like.
Okay, great. That might come down. Okay, great. Thank you.
The effort began at 8 o'clock. Dozens of people showed up at the Galleria Mall in Fort Lauderdale. People from Fort Lauderdale and North Broward County all trying to help with food, blankets, and medicine. Many of these people know how lucky Broward was, and they know that they can help their neighbors in Dade County.
You know, you watch the news and it's so sad. We came out of it just unscathed, and you know, you can't forget about the people. So we couldn't do enough.
I feel sick to think of everything that these people have lost. You know, anything that anybody can do is something. You know, if everybody would just do a little bit, it might help a little bit more.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. They know it's only a small effort here, but these days, every inch of help is appreciated. And the reason for that, of course, is buildings like behind me, where this one is blasted out, and there are 50,000 people who remain homeless, and they are, of course, need essentials: food, water, medicine. And those are the things that they're depending now on their neighbors to the north to bring them. We know that getting here and getting that equipment, that food here rather, is a little tough. We were in a huge traffic jam stretching for miles just trying to get to this part of the area, and you have to pass through with identification. If you're not from here and you can't prove it, they won't let you through. We saw a caravan of about 20 ambulances pass by about 5 minutes ago, and they had their lights on, presumably to help get them through some of the traffic so they can get to some of the most hard-hit areas. It is still a process of rebuilding here, and the operative words in all this is slow, but they are beginning to make more improvements in the recovery. Back to you.
It really looks like a third world country, is really what it does. Thank you, Richard.
Well, many of you here in Central Florida are also opening your hearts and wallets to help the storm victims.
8 local radio stations and the Red Cross set up in front of the Orlando Arena this morning to collect those donations, and Steve Triggs has that story.
All right, thanks a lot, sir. That's wonderful.
Kept trying to bribe me with this contract.
Much money. I think I'll get a bag.
8 radio stations that usually compete for listeners team up for a good cause. The promotion draws a steady stream of commuters donating cash and goods to the Red Cross. It's all to benefit victims of Hurricane Andrew.
Why do you think it's important to help these people?
Because they got no homes, and I think we should give a little.
Maybe we can give the world another picture of the United States. Not just the LA riots and all that, but people sticking together and acting as a community.
The donations come in dollars, 10s and 20s. One guy writes a check for $500. Others bring food and supplies.
Baby food. A woman came by with a baby that could not have been a couple of more months old, and she brought tons of diapers and baby food as well, and plenty of canned goods.
By morning's end, contributions top $30,000.
My heart goes out to the people there, and it just gives me the chills that just one little stroke up north and it could have been us.
For radio stations fond of contests and publicity stunts, this may be the most valuable promotion of all. In Orlando, Steve Triggs, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
And the Red Cross will continue to collect cash donations during the lunch hour. They are set up at Barnett Plaza in downtown Orlando, or you can call the Red Cross office and they'll tell you how to donate.
That's a good effort. Well, almost any kind of weather would be better than what we've heard about all week. Danny Trainer is next with his AccuWeather forecast to tell us what we can expect around here.
And later this half hour, in other news, a man is barricaded inside a Winter Garden store at this hour. Police outside believe he's the suspect in a drive-by shooting. We'll take you there live.
Airports slowly coming back to life today. Domestic flights are allowed to come and go. The east side of the airport received the most serious damage. Some hangars collapsed on cargo planes. The tower received no serious damage. New Orleans Airport was closed this morning but has now reopened without any major damage. However, they're still having some electrical power problems, and so flights may be delayed. You are advised to check with your individual airline if you plan on traveling to New Orleans to get your flight time, departure, and arrival information.
Hi. The storm, we did not know what time it was going to make landfall because as of last night, it started to lose steering currents, which, direct its movement. It's just like the steering wheel on a car. It's steering the course of the storm. Those things, the steering currents diminished so much that the storm was actually steering itself by its own whipping around motion. It was causing itself to bobble along the coast. And so when was it going to make landfall? Well, it made landfall about 1 o'clock in the morning, about 2 o'clock our time. And the area that's considered landfall is Bayou Vista in New Orleans. Those of you who don't know where that is will probably have to look it up on an atlas or something like that. But all around Morgan City, Louisiana, New Iberia, as you saw in some of the reports there, got the brunt of the storm. It is still a hurricane. And as a hurricane, it has coordinates. As coordinate people, we will be giving you those.
Even though they're over land.
Even though it's over land. I think they'll probably in the next hour you'll hear it at least finally get down to tropical storm status, and it may still be a tropical depression by late tonight as it moves on up into the mid-Mississippi Valley.
Still ripe for spinning out tornadoes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And the destruction in Miami to me looks like tornado-type damage. Were there a lot of, we haven't heard anything about this.
No, there were very few tornadoes. There were more tornadoes in the area now, Louisiana, simply because you've got more cooler air aloft and it's able to have more contrast. Over Florida, many layers of the atmosphere were in equal ratios, so they did not have the contrast that created the tornadoes. Ours was strictly hurricane damage over South Florida.
Wind, just pushing.
Yes,
That's
it was.
amazing.
And again, mobile homes receiving an awful large amount of the damage. Let me show you what's going on for right here locally. Not much to say. Things are going to be very normal. In fact, if anything, the effects that we're going to feel out of Andrew now continue to be possibly a drop in the chance of rain. It's only about 30% for today. There is something new going on out in the Atlantic Ocean that we're going to be telling you about eventually. Well, let's begin, though, with this data here. 87 for Orlando, 87 Daytona Beach, 86 in Melbourne. Here's a look at the twists and turns of Andrew as it moves into the Louisiana area. This is a 10-hour loop, so what you see is very little movement as its forward speed almost slowed to 8 miles an hour, which is what the current speed is. It still has 75-mile-an-hour winds, therefore it is classified as a hurricane. You'll find that many of your tracking charts do not have latitude and longitude over land areas. It's mostly over water areas. But if you still are tracking it and capable of doing so, we'll give you the coordinates in just a moment. This is the latest radar out of Slidell, Louisiana. You can see the tight core here. Lots and lots of rain. Potential flooding is the problem. 30.6 north, 91.6 west. Its movement is toward the north at 8. The winds are 75 miles an hour. This is approximately 25 miles to the west-northwest of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And as I said, it will still be a tropical storm as it moves into North Louisiana and still will be a tropical depression. That at 5 a.m. the Central Time on Friday over northern Mississippi and Alabama. For us, it's going to be a chance of afternoon, evening thunder showers, but it's a lower chance than normal. It's 30% for today. It's still going to be hot, 94. Overnight, dropping down to 74, and the 5-day forecast sounds like I'm at home. It sounds like I'm in the right place. It sounds like Florida. So let's
good old forecast.
Let's take advantage of this nice weather and show up, turn out, and write checks and help out the folks in South Florida.
Absolutely.
Could be us. That's right.
Thanks, Danny. When we come back, our live team coverage of Hurricane Andrew will continue.
And we will go back again to Louisiana when Eyewitness News at noon comes back. Stay with us. No, Hurricane Andrew is moving over Louisiana right now, adding to the record damage it has already caused. It's being called the most costly natural disaster in U.S. history.
Dozens of homes have been destroyed in Louisiana, dozens of people hurt. Kevin Reese has more from Louisiana.
Hurricane Andrew is now bearing down in the Baton Rouge area. It is southwest of that area. Here in New Orleans, the worst is apparently over. It did not get the major part of Hurricane Andrew. However, here in New Orleans, there are as many as 200,000 people without power today. The majority of the damage last night came from tornadoes, and one area that was particularly hard hit is west of here, an area called LaPlace in St. John's Parish. We want to take you there now and show you some pictures we took late last night and early this morning. Home after home looked like this one last night. The tornado destroyed as many as 50 homes in a 7-mile stretch of St. John's Parish in western New Orleans. We found homeowners out, some of them heavily armed, out protecting what valuables they could find. Some homes lost roofs, others were virtually destroyed, disintegrated. Cars and trucks were tossed about. You simply cannot believe the extent of the damage here. Now, some of the homes are gone. Others were picked up and tossed several hundred feet away off of their foundations. What is remarkable here is that there are no deaths to report. 33 people were hospitalized, 6 in serious condition, so the residents here do consider themselves very lucky.
Came out, I couldn't open this door because the windows had blown in and the pressure so went out the side. And when we opened the side door, the house was in my yard. And then we went down the street and we said I got about 8 houses down the street, 6 of them completely gone.
This was my living room right here with a sunken den. A formal living room and a dining room. That's my den over there. That's my kitchen, what was left of my kitchen. But other than that, we came through it. My neighbor's house right here just disintegrated. I mean, I heard it fly over my house. It was just like a large train that was just roaring.
Now, that same tornado, we are told, also hit a church in that area. Again, it cut a 7-mile stretch through that particular community outside of New Orleans. We are also told that that same tornado did hit a school that was being used as a shelter. But again, there are no deaths to report. We have been told this morning that one man at a particular shelter did die of a heart attack. But according to, as far as the tornadoes are concerned, as far as the hurricane is concerned here in the New Orleans area, remarkably, no deaths to report. Again, about 200,000 people without power. The winds are still heavy here at times, plenty of rain, but here in New Orleans itself has appeared to miss the major part of the storm. But again, the major damage last night came from tornadoes spawned by that hurricane, and the hurricane now bearing down on the Baton Rouge area. This is Kevin Reese reporting live from New Orleans.
All right, thanks, Kevin. There is other news today. President Bush is sending a new warning to Iraq. We'll have that story next.
And we'll take you live to a West Orange County store where a suspect and police are involved in a standoff at this hour.
The bottom line on Hurricane Andrew. Right now, Andrew is close to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with sustained winds of 75 miles an hour. Forecasters say the storm's expected to weaken further. The death toll in Florida and the Bahamas now stands at 17.
No deaths are reported so far in Louisiana. And President Bush says he is freeing up $10 million in federal aid to help Florida's cleanup effort. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.
See you on Live at 5.
Is closed caption as a public service of Princeton Hospital.
This is WESH. The news starts now.
Hurricane Andrew storms into this shelter, chasing evacuees out of what they thought was safe harbor. This as gale force winds tear down parts of a small coastal Louisiana town. Good evening, I'm Wendy Chioji. Andrea is off tonight.
I'm Steve Rontanero. Our 2 News Storm Team coverage begins now and continues for the next hour and a half. The president says he'll help hurricane-ravaged South Florida with temporary jobs. But right now, South Florida residents are happy just to get some water and a meal. Tonight, that area has company in its misery up in Louisiana. The killer hurricane has now taken 19 lives in its swath from the Bahamas through Florida and on into Louisiana. It was just after daybreak when Hurricane Andrew ripped into the Louisiana coastline. A storm with a double-barrel punch. 2 News reporter Beth Powers is in New Iberia. That's on the central Louisiana coast. We'll check in with her in just a few minutes. First, though, let's bring you up to date on what has been happening in South Florida.
Rebuilding South Florida, that's what's going on, and it's going to be a massive undertaking. Controlling who gets into the devastated areas is critical to getting work done without sightseers in the way. Today, authorities clamped down on who got through and who didn't. We begin our storm team coverage with Dave McDaniel in Homestead. Dave?
Wendy, we've told you about the efforts to control looting in these devastated areas, to take care of the people who are trying to really take advantage of the opportunity to go into businesses. But even the well-intended, curious people can cause problems. That's why the authorities clamped down today. controlling access to places like Homestead.
My grandparents' house in Naranja was totally blown away. My uncle, which is his father's house, is blown away, and my mother's house is blown away.
Nobody was going to deny this guy a trip south. For his family, lumber, food, and other supplies are critical.
You live down there? Family?
Every car heading toward South Florida is checked out. The people inside should have a specific reason or they can't get in. South Florida is no place for people who aren't helping. This carload just wanted to go down and look around. They were told to turn around.
And that's what we're trying to avoid, keeping all the sightseers.
Checking everyone caused a huge morning backup on the turnpike. Even precious food got hung up in the traffic jam.
We've got sandwiches for about 1,000, and what we're doing is going down into the harder hit areas and go back to Kendall to reload.
The National Guardsmen know the delays are inconvenient, but they say the reason's important.
Because they just get in the way, and it's just holding progress up, trying to get things cleaned up and everything, you know.
With so many critical things that must get to South Florida, it's no time for the simply curious. And the poor communication in this area also complicates things. People with family here can't call them. They really want to drive down and make sure everything's okay. They should not be discouraged. If they're coming down here to help out, to help rebuild, or to bring supplies, they are being allowed in. They should know, however, that they're going to have a long wait, only a couple of ways in, the Florida Turnpike being the largest, and it's been backed up all day, as bad as we've seen it since the storm rolled through.
Okay, and I guess, Dave, the roads on the way down there, I don't know if you're seeing them from where you are pretty much jam-packed.
Well, the roads are jam-packed. We were caught in that traffic ourselves today. There are only a couple of ways into the Homestead, Florida City area. That's why it's just imperative that they keep the sightseers and the curious people out. People know that they want to come down and take pictures and all that, but there's just no room for them. This is a serious spot.
Absolutely. First things first. Thanks a lot, Dave McDaniel, live in Homestead.
Now, the hurricane is now a tropical storm. Let's get the latest from Dave Marsh in the Weather Center.
Well, Steve, as expected, the storm is beginning to weaken and weaken rapidly. The winds right now only around 45 to 50 miles per hour. It's almost a textbook case following all the rules that you read in textbook. Here's a satellite picture of the center, or what we can find of the center. What remains of the center is about 20-25 miles south of Natchez, Mississippi. Now, it's drifting northward, not very fast, about 5 to 10 miles per hour. And late tonight, early tomorrow morning, it's going to take off toward the northeast. And not only is there going to be heavy rain in Louisiana, in the next 48 hours, there's going to be some very serious rains in the southeastern section of the country from Georgia into the western Carolinas. Latest radar summary picture, you can clearly see the eye there straddling the Mississippi-Louisiana border. And the NOL there, that's New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi up to the north. So that rain pattern clearing the coastline and moving to the north, and that eye will be filling in. And it's just going to be a case of rainfall. And they also still have the potential for tornadoes throughout that region. I'll have more satellite pictures and update on the radar later on in the newscast.
All right, thank you, Dave. As we said, New Iberia was smack in Andrew's path. The people who live there have some stories to tell. 2 News' Beth Powers has heard a lot of them and has a few to tell herself.
They huddle in the hallways of New Iberia Senior High, hoping Hurricane Andrew will spare their tiny town.
Don't look good with the malls and all the wind they got, you know. Look like we're going to get it, though.
The wind begins picking up after midnight. By 2 o'clock, chunks of the roof are being torn from the shelter. Soon afterwards, rain gushes from the ceiling. The evacuees grab their belongings and head to a drier area. Hurricane Andrew not nearly as strong as it was when it slammed into South Florida a couple of days ago. But the folks staying at this evacuation shelter are finding that hard to believe this morning. A moment of hysteria when it sounds as though part of the roof might be collapsing into the building.
Okay, baby. Go, hurry up. Get us out of here. Just relax, everybody. Just relax.
There is no assurance for these victims of Hurricane Andrew. After assessing the damaged shelter, they can only wonder what has happened to their homes and those who were left behind.
That was Beth Powers reporting from New Iberia. Scott Hansen has been tracking storm damage in other cities in Louisiana. He joins us with those pictures from the Satellite Center. Scott?
Well, Wendy, for a time, people were worried how the city of New Orleans would fare the storm. You might be surprised just how well it did. Now the bands played on along Bourbon Street in the French Quarter as Andrew came ashore. There were all sorts of warnings to get out, but people just wouldn't leave. Some bars even offered hurricane specials as the storm moved in.
You're going to be out while you're on with the NOPD.
Thus, the National Guard stood by in the stiff winds and the heavy rains. They will stay in that city to protect the abandoned homes and businesses from any looters. Meanwhile, President Bush is on his way to Louisiana now to take a look at the damage. Here's the president as he leaves the Washington area. Earlier, he called on Americans to pull together to help the victims of Andrew. He also freed up $10 million in federal money. The president figures that that should be enough to hire 5,000 people to help clean up the mess in South Florida. More on the storm coming up at 6 o'clock, including the story of some nursing home residents who rode out Andrew in South Florida, all because emergency workers forgot they were there. That story coming up at 6. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Scott. Many hurricane evacuees were leaving Central Florida today, but unsure of what they'll do when they get back to South Florida. They've been filling hotels and shelters in our area since Sunday. Some wanted to wait until the dust settled, so to speak, hoping electricity and phone service would be restored when they got home. Others still have no place to go, period.
Are you going to go back down to Homestead at all?
No, there's nothing there. They said it's up to the Pentagon what we're going to do with the base. They said to come back in 7 days. They have nothing there for us, nothing. There's nothing there.
Returning evacuees could get water and a few essentials at a rest stop on I-95 south of Palm Bay. REACT, a group of radio operators, provided the service. Evacuees told us motel rooms were not always easy to find here in Central Florida, but they were not overcharged when the rooms were available. Many people in this area stocked up on supplies when they thought Hurricane Andrew might be headed in our direction. One man's decided to put the items to use in South Florida, and support for his idea is gaining momentum. Here's Ron Kendrick reporting from New Smyrna Beach.
We went to the house and talked it over. Duke Southard's in the recycling business. This weekend, the items he'll be recycling are the ones he stocked up on in advance of Hurricane Andrew. He's asking others to do the same.
This thing was heading ready to dust. Well, I was buying bottled water. I was buying batteries. I got all them batteries. We decided what we're going to do with them. I said we're going to load them in our recycling trailers and haul them down.
Southard will load up his trucks and trailers Saturday morning and head for the Miami area. He's calling it a wagon train of help. Joining in the support are the cities of New Smyrna Beach and Edgewater. The municipalities have donated trucks to join in the caravan.
It's our people, it's our, our community, our state, and I think we truly are our brother's keepers.
Southard says his caravan will roll into the hard-hit areas and distribute items directly to the people who need them.
We've got the time, we've got the money, we've got the effort, we've got the volunteers. If we don't do it, that's the sin.
Anyone wishing to donate to the effort can contact Southard's Recycling in New Smyrna Beach. Ron Kendrick, 2 News.
Hopefully the traffic situation will improve by the time those folks hit the road on Saturday. Donna Morehouse joins us now with the latest on the roadways locally and in South Florida. Donna?
Wendy, it's still pretty much a mess in South Florida. Here's the latest. All southbound state roads have been closed south of Kendall Drive in Miami. The reason, there are checkpoints set up all along Kendall. That's what's causing those big backups on all of the state roads. That's including the Palmetto Expressway. If you have no ID, there'll be no entry. The Turnpike extension that goes into South Dade County and into the Keys is bumper to bumper for over 8 miles. That's also due to a checkpoint at US 1. Malfunctioning traffic lights in parts of downtown Miami, and almost all the traffic lights are out in Hialeah. Here in Orlando, our problems seem very small. We just have a minor slowdown on I-4 northeastbound through downtown at Ivanhoe and at Princeton. I'm Donna Morehouse, Metro Traffic Control for 2 News.
The normal traffic stuff does seem rather insignificant.
Pales in comparison, that's for sure. Anyway, coming up later on 2 News at 5, the morning after Andrew brought scenes like this to the Miami International Airport. We'll get a report from Stephen Stock on what it's like there right now.
And we got some more rough pictures from Miami's Metro Zoo, but despite what it looks like, there is some good news about the animals.
Hurricane Andrew closed schools throughout Dade and Broward counties. That includes the University of Miami, which was supposed to start classes this Monday. Instead, this was a time to pack up and go home for these university students. Summer vacation was unexpectedly extended by another 2 weeks by Hurricane Andrew. School officials say they will pay, at least partially, for the students to go home.
I'm going to stay at my house.
Folks running from Hurricane Andrew after the fact ran into another whirlwind at Miami International Airport. The terminal was packed today with people waiting on the few flights out. Stephen Stock has that story from MIA.
Miami International Airport resembled a refugee camp as tens of thousands of people tried to get out of the area by air.
We can give you information about your stuff, but... all right. So you can help me right here.
Tensions and frustrations ran high among travelers. Many had to wait hours just to get to the ticket or information counter, only to be told they had to go someplace else.
We've been going back and forth for about 3 hours now to Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio?
Yes.
You had a hard time getting in and out?
Yes, definitely. Information.
Others who had to deal with the crowds all day kept a stiff upper lip.
People understanding, really. Yes, people getting the right attitude for this moment. Yeah, nothing else to do.
Some travelers had no idea what they were going to do if they couldn't get a plane.
Well, I don't know yet. We're still waiting for a flight to come in from Haiti.
The crush of people was compounded by the airline's schedule. There were only a few flights in and out of the airport, and authorities say they don't expect to be on a full schedule for several more days. Until then, travelers through Miami International can expect gridlocks inside the airport terminal that rival the ones outside on the highways. In Miami, Stephen Stock, 2 News.
If you have questions about the airline schedules out of Miami, don't call the airport. Call the airline reservation numbers instead.
Today, Miami-Dade Metro Zoo officials say most of the zoo's animals did survive the hurricane. Zoo curators toured the facility today. It was hit hard by the storm. Many of the exotic birds somehow lived through the hurricane and were hanging around today just waiting to be fed. And the drop in barometric pressure put pregnant animals into labor. This is one of the critters born during Andrew. He probably should be named Andrew. Not really sure exactly what that is. Sure is cute. They say it may take up to 6 months to rebuild the zoo to get it anywhere close to what it used to be.
I wonder about their insurance coverage for something like that. The cost would have to be phenomenal.
Oh, boy.
And then what do you do with the animals in the interim?
Absolutely. Some of them, I guess, have been sent up to Tampa to Busch Gardens, at least the koala bears. Well, still ahead tonight, we will go back to Dave in the Weather Center for the latest on Andrew.
President Bush makes a major announcement about the situation in Iraq. We'll be back.
And I'm Dave Riley, Variety 101. Hey, never let a TV guy around when radio guys can do a job better. We did something incredible this morning. We're going to tell you about it right up. Coming up.
I know. Stay tuned, I guess. I don't know.
There's been a lot of talk about scuttling next week's elections. It is not final at this point, but it does appear the Florida primary will go forward as scheduled, despite the destruction in Dade County. 200 polling places in South Florida no longer exist. They were flattened. The primary is scheduled for next Tuesday, September 1st. We'll let you know if that date changes.
Oh, boy. I think the scary thing of all this is that Andrew starts with A. And it's only the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's true, yes. It was ironic. About a year or so ago, one of the top researchers in the country on tropical storms said the decade of the 90s would be a decade of stronger storms. And boy, did we ever start out with a strong one. I have never, in my 24, 25 years or so around Florida tracking these things, seen a storm of that magnitude affect 2 areas such as Andrew has done. But it's not finished yet either, as a matter of fact. Let's take a look at this satellite picture, and it doesn't look really all that dangerous on this particular picture, but it still is, even though the winds have subsided a great deal. They're down to about 45 to 50 miles per hour. It's classified as a tropical storm. The lowest central pressure now at 29 hundredths inches. That's 29.29. And it's moving north at about 8 miles per hour. The center located just about here just south of Natchez, Mississippi, which is right up there. New Orleans right down there. And the storm, again, is drifting to the north. This is what it looked like just offshore. Of course, moving over land, robbed of its energy. The eye disappears more or less, and it starts filling up. And, of course, there's a lot of rainfall, and they've had some tornadoes throughout the region as well. Very dangerous. The latest radar summary showing you the rain pattern. We can still see the eye here on the surface, and that'll be filling again as the storm drifts off toward the north. And then late tonight, early tomorrow morning, this thing is going to take a turn to the northeast and really take off. And it looks like there's going to be some serious flooding in the eastern portion of the country. Again, this is the current position. There's a cold front pushing down, and we've had our usual share of showers and thunderstorms. So with this thing heading toward the northeast, by this time high tomorrow night should be located over northern Alabama, and there's going to be some serious rainfall throughout northern Georgia, western, south, and North Carolina, and of course that surrounding area. But that should be the heaviest rainfall area with this cool air pushing in behind and plenty of moisture with that low pressure system itself. So again, those winds down to about 45 to 50 miles per hour, and it will continue to weaken. I'm sure by tonight it will be just a tropical depression, and tomorrow night will just be a low pressure system producing a lot of rainfall. Well, over in central Florida, it's just been very, very nice, and no changes expected through tomorrow. Well, tonight, partly cloudy, 76 for the morning low. And then for tomorrow, we will see a little bit of action in the afternoon, not much, 92 for the high. The winds out of the southeast at 10. But with that storm moving into the southeast, it looks like we're going to be seeing some rainfall on Wednesday throughout central Florida. Might be a pretty good rain day at that. And I'll have another update on the weather later on. Here's Wendy.
Okay, thanks, Dave. There is some non-Andrew news today. Orange County's SWAT team surrounded a business in Winter Garden earlier today looking for a man who shot into a house in Oakland. Deputies chased 2 suspects to this cleaners this morning. Police arrested the driver, Lavelle Johnson, but Johnson's passenger, Robert Woodred, ran inside. The SWAT team stormed the building but didn't find anyone. Witnesses say the suspects opened fire on a house on Henshin Street after trying to burglarize it. Officers found a shotgun and a semi-automatic inside the suspect's car. On the national and international front, President Bush has given Iraq 24 hours to stop flying over the Shiite Muslim region of southern Iraq. The president says under the no-fly zone, Allied planes will fly surveillance missions and will shoot down Iraqi warplanes beginning below the 32nd parallel. Iraq has withdrawn most of its fixed-wing aircraft from the region, but Iraq's ambassador to the U.S. says his country will not agree to the no-fly zone.
We want to take a moment now to remind you how much the Red Cross is helping people all over the world. From Yugoslavia, where the fighting just goes on, to California, where wildfires are raging and people are burned out of their homes. And then back to our corner of the world, where Andrew has left so many people suffering. Red Cross needs your help. Here's how you can do it. Send a check to the Central Florida Red Cross at 5 North Bumby, that is in Orlando, 32803. Mark your check for disaster relief. Then they know exactly where it's going to go. It's the best way to make sure your money goes where it's needed most. The Red Cross also warns not to be sucked in by any unauthorized door-to-door collections. They have not authorized any collections, and in fact, they've issued an advisory saying that they are not honoring any T-shirt or other promotional sales. Apparently, there are some people out there trying to make some pocket money on their own at the expense of your goodwill in the Red Cross.
Okay.
Be on your toes. Well, here's something that is pretty remarkable. Competitive business like radio, area radio stations got together, pitched in to help the hurricane victims.
Bill Schaefer takes us to the Orlando area for a look at a real team effort.
Listen to any other station. You didn't listen to any other station. This camaraderie's making me sick. You're sort.
Figure out that stock market someday. Hurricane goes through, market goes up. I don't know. Boy, what a neat thing this morning.
Speaking of good news, yeah, it's amazing how these competitors are working together. Everybody over Central Florida, builders, people from all over, all walks of life are helping. This radio thing was incredible. Variety 101 just last night was thinking, hey, wouldn't this be neat if we tried this? They had all these stations at the Orlando Arena parking lot, and they raised an incredible amount of money just like that.
That's great.
It's a fascinating story. Here's who helped. K92, WDBO, Q96, WMMO, Variety 101, 102 Jams, LOQ, WNZ 740, Mix 105, Cool 105.9, XL 106.7, and Magic 107.7. Not even 24 hours notice to pull this off. Everybody was cooperating together, everybody getting the word out, and it worked. And it looked like a cartoon. It was so fantastic. Rocky and Bullwinkle couldn't have done any better. We'll probably show you that in a minute, but I want to tell you about something else that was also an incredible example of people working together. There are a lot of problems with pets and animals in the Miami region. These animals, their homes were destroyed. They're just wandering out on their own. Their owners can't get to them. There's a group from the Orlando Humane Society, Seminole County Humane Society, Back to Nature Wildlife Refuge, who are getting together to take a caravan down there to help these pets. If you can. They need kitten and puppy chow. They need towels and blankets, cat carriers and dog crates, bowls, leashes and collars, you know, those kind of things. They need bleach and disinfectant. There is no way anybody else is going to be able to help these animals. You cannot get into the area. and get back out. These people are going to take a caravan down on Friday. They're going to get a caravan down on Saturday, 2 different groups from Central Florida, and they're going to hopefully get some of these animals out, bring them up here. Then they're going to need homes for them while they get the situation straightened out down there. But I'm telling you, it's a fascinating thing how Central Florida is like the hub of all these relief activities. This is being put together at the last minute.
And something like that you never even think about.
You said it, you hit it right on the nose in the last segment when you talked about the relief effort and how all of us that were getting bottled water and all of us that were getting supplies and canned foods and perishables, let's use those now. We didn't need them, but those people do. Get them to the people who can use them. They need water. The pets, people don't have any water. Not even the pets have nothing. So drop anything off you can down.
You have to give some credit to the veterinary hospitals as well. The vets are donating a lot of the stuff that they're going to take down.
There's some of them, they're looking for vets to go down there also.
Yeah, let's see if we can clear some time in the next hour to get your story on with the radio.
Be great. It's a lot of fun.
Stick with us.
This is WESH. The news continues now.
Hurricane Andrew is no more, but leaves residents of 2 states with nothing but misery. Good evening. I'm Lisa Myers. Robin has the night off.
And I'm Ed Highland. Topping our news at 5:30, Andrew came knocking on Louisiana's door early this morning. This is a look at the massive storm as it made its approach over a 23-hour period. Now, at 3 a.m. today, the Category 4 hurricane slammed into south central Louisiana. Now downgraded to a tropical storm, Andrew left a swath of destruction and is blamed for at least 1 death in this Gulf Coast state. Now, much of the damage was concentrated in the community of New Iberia. Paul Hogan is now standing by live. He's going to join us with more on what he saw and heard from Andrew as it roamed ashore last night.
I'm in south central Louisiana in Bayou Country near New Iberia along the coast where the full force of Hurricane Andrew roared through overnight. Power is out here, telephone lines are down, blocking the entrances and exits on the highways, and homes and businesses like the one you see behind me, destroyed. The eye of the hurricane barged up against the western Louisiana coast just after midnight, bringing with it blinding rain and wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. Tornadoes sprang up across the state, tossing trailer homes through the air, ripping away rooftops. By daybreak, as the hurricane lost some of its power, the residents who refused to flee from the storm could survey the damage. Many had spent the night in shelters, schools and churches, buildings that could withstand the storm's fury.
Well, I'm doing fine. My husband is he's got a bad back and he can't hardly walk, but we're doing pretty good right now.
I woke up about 4 o'clock and don't do that. I thought everything was going to pieces, and it did. The roof and the room was shaking real loud. It got pretty scary there.
In New Iberia, Louisiana, at a high school converted to a shelter for 900 people, the roof blew off, setting off pandemonium.
Well, at first they panicked, and we did the best we could to calm them down. The Red Cross and the local police. We were able finally to calm them down and assure them, that the roof was still intact.
Across Louisiana, the count as of this afternoon is 2 dead. There are thousands who are homeless, hundreds who are injured. President Bush is said to be arriving here to be greeted by Governor Edwards at this hour. He will tour some of the most devastated areas up the road in Lafayette. Paul Hogan reporting live from New Iberia, Louisiana.
All right, thank you, Paul. Of course, we'll have much more on this situation, and Lisa has some figures for us as well from this storm damage.
That's right, Ed. While Louisiana officials try to assess the damage, here are some numbers detailing Andrew's effects here in Central Florida. The death toll now stands at 16. 180,000 people are homeless, 63,000 homes were destroyed, and nearly 600,000 customers still have no electricity. Well, it will be 3 weeks or a month before power is restored to South Florida. Food, gas, water, all are in short supply. The Florida Turnpike is the supply line to hardest hit areas. Now is the time to keep it open for people who must get through. Dave McDaniel joins us live from South Florida with that story. Dave?
Well, we've been bringing you the pictures from South Florida, pictures of hardship, serious hardship. They are images that will never leave us as long as we live. To get this area back to normal, there is serious work that must be done, and those workers just can't have other people in the way.
All
has been the most patient ones in the universe.
You can't rebuild until you get money, making the insurance disaster teams crucial. They're allowed in. This is how the Florida Turnpike looked for hours. Various checkpoints backed up traffic as they worked to control access to South Florida.
Just going down there to take pictures and getting in the way, you know, we just don't need that kind of clutter.
Eventually, they quit stopping the turnpike itself. Traffic was just too awful. The checkpoints continued on the ramps, though, so people on the way to help South Floridians could get through, but people looking to sightsee could not. Many of the people left with nothing, have to make trips back and forth as they work to rebuild.
Very frustrated. Yeah, but we're hanging in there.
So for a while, it'll be rescue crews, cleanup workers, friends and family, and that's all. And for people who truly can't understand, I think you could compare this area to some starving nation in other countries that we so often work so hard to send aid to. These people have nothing. They literally have nothing. No power, no food, no electricity, no water. That is the supply line, the Florida Turnpike. As these people come down to try to fix things, try to rebuild things, and try to bring in supplies, they're literally trying to revive a nation, if you will. In this case, it's the community south of Miami. I think that comparison is very accurate. That's why it's so important for them to limit the amount of traffic. Even with the people that are supposed to be through here, the Florida Turnpike has been backed up for hours, a literal parking lot.
Now, Dave, you covered Hurricane Hugo. How does the anguish compare there?
Well, I think that the damage is very similar. Hugo was a serious storm, and Andrew was as well. But this is a much larger population center. And I think a lot of people here felt they were far enough inland. They didn't really learn the lesson from Hugo, where Charlotte, which was 110 miles inland, was devastated as well. This storm came through and tore up so many homes, and so many people are going to take years before they're back to normal, if ever.
All right, thanks, Dave. Dave McDaniel reporting in Miami.
Well, some Central Floridians are helping out storm victims, but getting right into the thick of things. Bob Keeling reports on a makeshift hospital in storm-ravaged Homestead, a MASH unit of sorts that's making the most of what it has, and that's not much.
Thanks to Hurricane Andrew's destructive hand, many people don't have a hospital here to heal their wounds. So they come here to this field hospital where conditions are less than ideal.
Well, we have dealt with a lot of potential infections. We're seeing a lot of lacerations in the legs, even some dog bites.
It's a strange atmosphere here. Supplies sit in boxes outside. Armed National Guardsmen stand at the ready. Despite the adverse conditions in this converted senior citizens center, the medical crews are getting by. 3 children have been born in this facility already. Reinforcements from Central Florida have arrived to spell fatigued workers. This group from Seminole County will help care for the wounded and anything else that's needed.
All over Central Florida is represented. Seminole County, Altamont Springs, Oviedo, Orlando, Orange County, lots of units down here helping out.
The more seriously injured patients have to be taken by ambulance. They can't land a helicopter close to this building because so many houses nearby are unstable. Military helicopters have replaced 2 county choppers destroyed in the storm. Talk about truly adding insult to injury. In Dade County, Bob Keeling, 2 News.
Now back to Louisiana again. President Bush is now touring storm-damaged Louisiana. He says he wants to see firsthand the havoc wrought by Hurricane Andrew. But before leaving Washington, the president provided additional federal money for some of the storm victims. For details, we go live to Washington and our Les Hines. Les?
Well, Lisa, the president is making $10 million in federal grants immediately available to help pay for the cleanup in South Florida. But given the damage done by Hurricane Andrew so far, that's just a drop in the bucket. And the president himself says both government and private sector help is being stretched to the limit. Well aware of the criticism his administration caught for its slow response to Hurricane Hugo, President Bush loosened the federal purse strings to help Florida deal with Hurricane Andrew.
We're making available today $10 million to create 5,000 short-term jobs for Floridians to clean up and restore public services in the aftermath of the hurricane.
I'm homeless completely. I don't have.
But Andrew's price tag of more than $15 billion in Florida alone is already considered the most expensive natural disaster in U.S. history, and federal resources are stretched to the limit.
The destruction from this storm goes beyond anything we've known in recent years.
Okay.
The American Red Cross is offering proof of that. It has set up shelters in Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. That despite the fact that the Red Cross's disaster relief fund has now run dry.
We do not get government funding to do this. So they need to know that if they want us there, they need to continue to support us so that we can be there.
Before leaving to assess the damage, President Bush declared parts of Louisiana a major disaster area. But federal officials say it could be days before relief centers are in place.
We got to see what the damage is, and can we actually get in there within those 1 or 2 days.
Now, federal officials say the extent of the damage has hampered their efforts to provide immediate assistance and are hoping that by Friday, at least 6 federal relief centers will be in place in South Florida. Lisa, back to you.
Thanks, Les. Les Hines reporting in Washington.
Well, just ahead, how Central Floridians are helping to meet the medical needs of hurricane victims.
And later, now that construction supplies are in high demand, the state looks into a flurry of price gouging reports.
You're watching 2 News at 5:30 with Ed Highland and Robin Chapman. Weather with Chief Meteorologist Dave Marsh. And sports with Mark Middleton.
Devastation of Hurricane Andrew becomes more clear in South Florida. So do the area's medical needs.
We saw some of that in Bob Keeling's report just a moment ago, and help is flowing in from around the state. And those who supply health needs in Central Florida have also been quick to help our neighbors to the south and west. Blood tops the list of essential needs. The shelves at the Central Florida Blood Bank are already looking a bit bare after an emergency shipment of more than 200 units was sent south. Hospitals around Homestead did not have an opportunity to stock up on blood prior to the arrival of Andrew. And now that Louisiana is also hurting, the shortage is getting critical.
The New Orleans Blood Bank just called us this morning and is desperate need of O-negative blood. O-negative is the universal donor, and what they often do in those immediate casualties is use their O-negative to try to resuscitate these people, and they've exhausted their supply.
Clean laundry is something most of us take for granted, but good health and hygiene in a disaster area relies on hospitals keeping their linens sterile. Orlando Regional expects other hospitals to truck in tons of their dirty laundry.
Well, in the aerospatial requirements, of course, you've got to deal with, first of all, quantity, a lot of bulk laundry on a daily basis, you know, so you're talking about the heat factor as far as cleaning those laundry materials, you know, but really the sheer bulk.
Normally more than 5,000 pounds of laundry is processed here each day, but in an emergency like this, they can process 2, maybe even 3 times as much. Across town at Florida Hospital, boxes of diapers, bottled water, and other items are being readied for shipment. With stores closed and shortages of nearly everything in South Florida, what might have been once considered a luxury in normal times is now a health necessity. Now, those who would like to donate blood are asked to check with either the Red Cross or the Central Florida Blood Bank. Many organizations are gathering medical supplies to be sent to South Florida. But one of the biggest needs right now is money. Again, check with your local branch of the Red Cross to make sure your dollars go where they're needed most.
Well, Hurricane Andrew was bad enough, but now there's more tropical storm activity brewing. Dave Marsh tells us more about that, plus the lingering effects of Andrew, next in weather. Andrew is over, but there's still some activity lingering on out there.
Well, in the sense of Andrew being a hurricane, yes, it's now a tropical storm, and by tonight will be a tropical depression. Tomorrow morning will be nothing more than a low-pressure system. But the result is a lot of rainfall, no matter what stage it's in here, the next 24 hours for Louisiana up into Arkansas. And then it's going to head toward the southeast, getting ahead of myself. Let's check things out, first of all, with the satellite picture. And you can see for yourself, it's the center, or what remains of the center of this big mess. It's now moving into the southwestern section of Mississippi. Last report, the winds were about 45 to 50 miles per hour. I'm sure they're even less than that right now, but this is the area that I just mentioned. And the cloudiness are just extending backward into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Watch the motion here from about 24 hours ago up until the present time. The eye clearly right here, and then that should be pushing off toward the north here. The computer picks it up. And then once it gets up into, northern Louisiana and into, or rather, western Mississippi, it should curve southeastward into the southeastern section of the country. It looks like some heavy rains coming that way, and particularly around western North Carolina, northern Georgia, western South Carolina, that region during the next 24 hours. And with that moisture area pushing off toward the east, we'll be on the tail end of it. So by Friday, our rainfall probability is going to increase a great deal throughout central and north North Florida. As a matter of fact, we may get more rain on Friday from this storm moving across the southeast than we did when it moved across the southern area of Florida. It looks like the computer's not going to pick it up, and again, that's the situation right now. Our weather conditions throughout central Florida are pretty good. The radar right now out of Daytona Beach is picking up a little bit of rain off the northeast coast. It's moving to the southwest, so that'll be bumping in the coastline, but very light rain. And there's also, I can't see it right now, but there was a very light rain shower near Disney World, and that's about it. That's probably gone as well. Let's go to the forecast right now, see what's happening overnight tonight. Partly cloudy, 76 degrees for the morning low. The winds light and variable. And then tomorrow, isolated afternoon showers, the high at 92, the wind southeast at 10 miles per hour, and the boating forecast, wind south at 10 knots, the sea's about 2 feet, and a high tide in the morning at 7:38. And with all this excitement still going on, we have to keep our eyes on what's happening further out in the tropics. 2 areas we're watching near Bermuda and a couple of hundred miles east of the Windward Islands. Looks pretty good right now for some development.
Oh, boy.
Just how far can a storm like Andrew go inland? I realize it's breaking down, but how far are the effects going to be felt?
Well, for example, I can go back to, it was Agnes, I think, in 1972 that went up through the Panhandle, eventually ended up in the northeastern section of the country and absolutely flooded New York and Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So it can go a long way.
Far-reaching.
Yeah.
Strong storm. All right. Thank you, Dave. Well, just ahead, Central Florida fire and rescue workers respond to a call for help from over 200 miles away. Bahamas from Brevard County. Reports of 200-mile-per-hour winds have begun to filter in from the islands. At least 3 people died. The number of homeless is still unknown, but many houses were blown away. Now, the New Life Christian Fellowship is collecting a plane load of supplies every day to send to the country. People there need water, medical supplies, and, of course, money. The church is asking people who bring in medical supplies to donate an extra 75 cents to help pay for transportation costs.
We've all seen the images coming out of South Florida in the wake of Hurricane Andrew, parts of it a virtual wasteland. Well, many people who are out of harm's way have offered to help change those pictures. 2 News' Claire Metz tells us about a relief effort that, while small, could make a big difference.
And heavy rescue here yet?
24 volunteer fire and rescue crewmen may have signed up for their toughest stint yet, helping South Florida hurricane victims through the nightmare.
They mentioned that we'd be doing a lot of medical runs. They're averaging over 1,000 calls a day down there in the area we'll be going to.
We've got to go prepared to cook, bring our own sleeping gear and whatever.
They know the days ahead will be rough, and most are taking unpaid leave from regular jobs to help out. The reason is simple.
I can't imagine what that would be like to lose everything you've got.
A couple of Holly Hill men will be a few hours ahead of the firefighters.
Just something trying to help people out, you know. Good people like Dale and Bill, we get down there and we show them how to cut wood.
Snake Andrus and pals Bill Fryman and Dale Shaver are taking time off work to clear a path across South Florida. Snake is a welder, but it's axes and chainsaws he and the others are stowing. In the wake of Andrew, they have their work cut out for them.
We can climb and rope and pull stuff down off houses. It help the folks get back in the house.
If it was in my backyard, I'd want you to come help me out. That's what it's all about, just helping one another.
The 3 took on Hugo. Now they're fighting it out with Andrew, and they say the good guys always win. In Volusia County, Claire Metz, 2 News.
There are a lot of good guys out there, and it's nice to see so many people are going to aid the people in South Florida.
Yes, indeed. We should remind folks, these guys are professionals. They have done this before, and as good-hearted as you might be, you don't want to head on down to South Florida right now. Let the professionals handle all that kind of stuff, and it's just a little warning we probably should pass on to folks. Well, just ahead, the state is trying to keep an eye out for some possible price gouging as construction materials come into big demand. We'll have that story next. Attorney General launched an investigation into reports that some merchants in South Florida are price gouging. Specifically, merchants selling lumber needed to repair the hurricane-ravaged area.
Here in Central Florida, we have received complaints about one hardware store in particular, Scotty's, and the Attorney General's office is investigating. Tell 2's Michelle Meredith is here with more. Michelle.
Well, we got a couple of calls about this. We got a call from a contractor and a store employee, both complaining about Scotty's. The price of some of their plywood has mysteriously doubled. The folks at Scotty's say it's no mystery. The mills have doubled their prices. Now, you might want to grab a pencil for this one. The folks with Scotty say it's true. The plywood they sold for $8 before and during Hurricane Andrew is now going for $16. They tell us they are not price gouging. They say the lumber mills have increased their prices by 50%. We talked to a store clerk about it.
Suppliers, it's expected that they may double their costs.
The folks at Scotty say the reason we're not getting complaints about other stores is that the other stores, like Builders Square, are completely out of plywood. And it's true. At Builders Square, the cubby holes where the popular plywood used to be are now bare. The folks at Builders Square say they've been told they have a 35% increase coming from the lumber mills, but they say they're going to absorb the increase. How can you afford to do that?
Well, Builders Square is going to take the loss on the plywood because we know that the needs of the community require it.
Down at Home Depot, plywood supplies are low because the bulk has been shipped down to South Florida. Right now, they're selling plywood they bought before the hurricane, and the price hasn't changed. When they reorder, they anticipate a price hike.
As far as going to double prices, that's kind of extreme. I'm not sure that would be a reality at this point.
Now, we called the lumber mills and they would tell us little about their price increases, only that they were a result of supply and demand. The Attorney General's office says down in South Florida, people are price gouging on everything from bread to generators. If you want to report a price gouging, here's a hotline number you can call. It's 1-800-643-1190. It's open from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. And we're hearing down in South Florida, bread's going for $5 a loaf.
Oh, boy.
That's people capitalizing on a tragedy down there. All right, thank you, Michelle.
Thanks,
Keep an eye on that for us. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Wendy and Steve are next. Stay tuned.
WFTV Orlando. Live from Channel 9, Central Florida's news leader, Bob Opsahl, Marla Weech, Danny Trainer's weather, and Pat Clark with sports. This is Eyewitness News at 6.
Hurricane Andrew came and went, but its legacy in Louisiana and here in Florida will be remembered for some time.
Good evening, everyone. Andrew has been downgraded to a tropical storm at this hour. It's still packing winds of up to 55 miles an hour, though. Louisiana residents are assessing the damage left in Andrew's wake. The storm spawned a slew of tornadoes. At least one person was killed by twisters in La Plaza, a suburb of New Orleans. That's the only confirmed storm-related death in the state. Still, the overall feeling among residents of the Bayou State is that they were extremely lucky.
The death toll in Florida and in the Bahamas stands at 17 tonight, and officials in South Florida are now going through the rubble looking for more victims.
Help is beginning to arrive from across the country, but is that help getting to the ravaged neighborhoods where it is most needed? Ross Cavett is live in Miami with more. Ross?
Well, it certainly looks like the calls for help down here have been answered. Generous folks in Central Florida and across the country have sent a lot of food, a lot of clothing, and a lot of cash to this area. But at this point, though, it appears the relief agencies simply don't know what to do with it. The donations of food and water keep pouring in from across the country. Generous people are sending help to South Florida. Sausage. But the help is only making it halfway, only to shelters set up in Dade County. Refugees like Guadalupe Corona say nothing is making it to the neighborhoods. Was there any help coming into your neighborhood from anybody?
No help at all from anybody. Nope, no place.
I'm having a really tough time trying to get located as to where the main problems are at.
The situation is driving Mario Crespi crazy. He came to the Red Cross ready and willing to go to work, but instead has been standing around.
I'm pretty able. I can do roofing, I can do work, I can do carpentry work, but nobody seems to be able to direct me in the right position.
So relief agencies have the goods and they have the volunteers. So what don't they have at this point? Namely, organization and access to neighborhoods that really need the help.
How's it going there? Doing all right?
So Mario Crespi and 3 other vigilante volunteers set out on their own without orders. They went to help evacuate nursing home residents to another shelter. Mario says this kind of work is much more satisfying.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel much better. I think it's where I need to be.
And you know, when we first arrived in some of those neighborhoods that have seen absolutely no help since the hurricane hit, we received a rather angry reaction at first, like, where have you people been. But after a while, of course, they were glad to see the help finally filtering in. The American Red Cross and the Southern Baptist Group appear to be doing the bulk of the relief work here in South Dade. At this time, I mentioned a lot of food, clothing, water, and cash has been flooding in. They say, though, there's still a desperate need for gasoline and ice in this area, 2 items that might have to wait until the electricity is once again turned on here. Right now, back to the studios.
Sounds like they could also use some folks down there with some good organizational skills.
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks, Ross. Another relief effort is underway here in Central Florida tonight. This one is police officers helping police officers, but anyone else who wants to help is welcome to do so.
Dozens of police lost their homes when Andrew pounded South Florida, and now Castleberry police are answering a call for help from their colleagues. Todd Ulrich joins us now live from the newsroom with that story. Todd?
Bob, Metro-Dade police officers sent out the call for help to officers across the state this morning. Within the hour, Castleberry police put together a rather unique donation drive, and it's going to make a difference.
We are accepting donations of food, water, adult and children's clothing.
That's the message Castleberry police took to the neighborhoods, and many of their neighbors answered. Some donating emergency supplies they bought when Andrew first threatened us.
When we thought it was going to head this way, we had gone to the store and stocked up on items, and since we didn't need to use them, we thought we'd send it to somebody who could.
The siren brought them out. From there, it wasn't hard to convince folks to give. Throughout the day, the response has been overwhelming. Some people didn't have time to gather donated goods, so they wrote checks, some very big checks. When Geraldine Fowler heard about the drive, she wrote a $1,200 check.
I just got carried away, I guess. I thought maybe if they took a couple $100 in and they could get a bargain on the diapers, maybe.
And not just diapers, but water and food and the basic necessities.
Oh, shampoos and all that, because they said they needed that too.
Castleberry police are collecting everything for 130 officers and their families in South Florida who lost everything when Andrew blew through.
Their houses are just completely obliterated. They have nothing. What they walked out of their house with on their backs is the only thing that exists.
Now, the Castleberry Police Department is being joined by agencies from across Seminole County. Their caravan leaves at noon tomorrow, bound for South Florida. Now, if you are interested in donating, you can drop off those goods at the Castleberry Police Department tonight through 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Back to you.
All right, let's hope by the time those goods get to South Florida, they have a little better distribution down there. Thank you, Todd. Well, a team of phone company workers is also on the way to South Florida tonight to help restore service to thousands of customers down there. Southern Bell has dispatched a 20-man crew from Orange County to the Miami area. Southern Bell has 2.5 million customers in South Florida, so they really need help tonight.
We have what's called a Slick 96, which is a concrete slab with a big box on top of it bolted down in lots of areas. The concrete slab is there, but there's nothing attached to it.
This crew, composed of volunteers, will probably spend the next month or so in South Florida.
Well, for the past 3 days, an Eyewitness News crew has been following a Homestead family through their hurricane ordeal.
The Wagner family spent 2 days in a shelter at Dr. Phillips High School here in Orange County, and yesterday they went back home for the first time since Hurricane Andrew. Jack Hambrick joins us now live from South Miami with more. Jack?
Well, Bob, the Wagners are just one of the thousands of families left homeless by Andrew. They are typical, by no means the exception. We followed them from the shelter in Orlando down here to their house in Homestead, and here's their story.
After almost 2 days in an Orlando shelter, the Wagner family is starting their long trip back to Homestead.
Okay, those are going to go in the truck.
The Wagners have seen the news reports and heard the rumors, but they have no idea what awaits them at home. As they head south, the damage steadily becomes more and more evident.
It's just incredible. It looks like a bomb went off over here. My block right here, where that white fence is at. It's destroyed.
Go back to me. I'm scared. We don't have no place to stay at my uncle's house.
It may be hard to believe, but the Wagners are somewhat lucky. They'll stay at a nearby relative whose house weathered the storm. But other relatives actually saw this destruction take place firsthand.
As unbelievable as it may sound, two of Ken Wagner's relatives rode the storm out here. after the ceiling collapsed on them in the front of the house. They came back here to the master bedroom closet where the roof eventually fell on their heads.
It's much worse than I thought it would be. It just fell apart. Everything fell apart.
Wagner worked over at the Homestead Air Force Base, and we know about all the damage that happened here. He has learned that the machine shop where he worked at has been totally destroyed, so he has no job right now. The Wagners do have relatives to stay with, and they do have insurance, which is more than some people have at this point. Back to you.
Boy, you really feel for them. All right, Jack. A lot of people are on the move this weekend because of Hurricane Andrew. Some folks are finding a new home in Central Florida behind bars. We'll explain next.
And is one famous former dictator now calling a Central Florida jail cell home? That story too when we come back.
Prisoners are on the move this week because of Hurricane Andrew.
350 of them, once housed in the Miami area, are now on their way to the Lake County Jail. Steve Olson is over there right now with a live report from Tavares. Steve?
Well, Bob, the federal government had the daunting task of evacuating some 3,500 federal prisoners out of the Miami area. Well, guess what? 1 out of every 10 is coming here. Another busload of federal prisoners arrives at the Lake County Jail. This load is from the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service. All told, some 350 federal prisoners evacuated from facilities in Homestead and Miami will be coming here to Lake County's brand new jail.
I'm willing to keep the inmates for as long as the federal government requests, as long as there are no disruptions of our operations, disruptions to the institution itself.
The federal government initially told Lake County officials perhaps 30 days would be needed to house these inmates, but it could be longer because of the extensive damage at Homestead. The federal government is even supplying its own officers and equipment needed to guard the 350 inmates.
I need to stress to the citizens of Lake County that we are not compromising the security of the community in any respect. These inmates are low-risk inmates by selection. This was our choice, and they are not going to pose a threat to the community. The staffing is appropriate. The security measures are appropriate.
And this isn't all just for the sake of charity. Lake County stands to make some money from this. $52 per day per prisoner. Back to you.
Ooh, that could add up.
That's interesting. All right, thank you, Steve. Well, some of the inmates moved from South Dade County are going to Talladega Federal Correctional Institution in Alabama. And one of those prisoners was former Panamanian strongman Manuel Noriega. Officials aren't saying if he went to the Talladega main prison or an adjoining prison camp. Interestingly enough, Noriega was offered to the Lake County jail system, but Lake County officials turned Noriega away. A spokeswoman for the U.S. Bureau of Prisons says Hurricane Andrew may have caused the largest evacuation ever in prison history.
Coming up next, Danny Trainer has the latest on what is now Tropical Storm Andrew.
And will Andrew's ravaging of the state affect elections next week? We'll let you know. Lawton Childs has decided that Florida's primary election will be held as scheduled on Tuesday, September 1st. Earlier, there was a question whether or not Childs had the legal authority to delay the elections only in hard-hit Dade County. Even before voters had Andrew to worry about, the primary had generated only moderate interest.
Be interesting to see what they do down there as a result.
Oh, brother.
When Andrew went on shore in Louisiana, it was still a hurricane. 11 hours later, it was still a hurricane.
That's a long time to stay alive.
You know, we were talking about wooden structures versus concrete structures. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference when you're hit with 140-mile-an-hour winds for, 3 hours.
Yeah.
Even a concrete structure is going to give a little bit. So I don't think there's any kind of structure that would have really stood up to those kind of winds for that long a period of time. Now it's tropical storm, but it still is a menace because it's dropping a lot of rain. That means flooding in Louisiana. We actually got maybe a feeder band cloud cover out of it. I'll try to show you how in just a moment.
Okay.
Let's begin with what happened today in Central Florida. It's 91 for Orlando. That's what the record book will show for today. 88 in Daytona Beach, 89 in Melbourne, and 91 in Ocala. And we have been negative on the rain scale today, yesterday, and basically the day before. Not a lot of shower activity. I think we'll see some shower activity returning by the end of the week. But right now, let's take a look at Andrew once again. There's nothing really to show you on radar or lightning right now, but you can see as the eye disappears from this, as it's downgraded, runs into friction, it loses its source of energy, the Gulf of Mexico, and it begins to diminish. But it diminished very slow. And now it's a tropical storm, and it may still be a tropical storm for several more hours. If you are tracking it, we will give you the latest coordinates. Here's what it looks like on radar out of Lake Charles, Louisiana, and this is not necessarily the eye, but an area where it's not raining. You can see there's a lot of rain stretching out all over this storm as it continues to push inland. And right now it's located right on the border of Louisiana and Mississippi, located at 31.0 north, 91.4 west, 50 miles north-northeast of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we expect it to move through Mississippi tonight and on up to northern Alabama by Friday. And one of the other things I thought you might be interested in seeing is a cold front that's coming in from the west. That cold front could possibly join forces with the storm, create a great deal of rain activity, and push it into the Appalachians. Now, here is the storm. Here is the cold front moving in from the west. The two merge somewhere over, say, Tennessee and Kentucky, and then push to the east. The Appalachians get inundated. At the same time, there's a bit of swirling cloud out in the Atlantic Ocean. We think that it may intensify and may actually get over some warm water and maybe be named, but I don't think it's headed toward the state of Florida. Here is what's going on. There's the storm. Here's the cold front we were just talking about. There's the low out in the Atlantic Ocean. This high starts giving away slowly, but the two will merge. And you can see by tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we have those two knocking heads together right here around the Tennessee Valley, and they will be big rain producers, and maybe some of it will actually come down here and give us an increased chance of rain. But it's not Andrew, it's just some of the moisture from Andrew. Here are some temperatures around the state at this hour, ranging from 85 at Daytona Beach, 88 in Orlando, 91 in Lakeland. Ocala comes in with 90 degrees. Here's the forecast, partly cloudy with a high tomorrow of 94, but still the chance of rain will be small, about 35%. Overnight, the temperature drops to 74. The 5-day forecast calls for temperatures in the 90s, 92 to 94, and overnight dropping down to 74. So we'll keep an eye on the new little things going on in the Atlantic, and we'll continue to be fairly rain-free over Central Florida. Actually, Andrew could be pulling a little moisture away from us, and that's one of the reasons for the reduced rain in this area.
The 2 News Storm Hotline.
Louisiana hit hard by Andrew before the storm runs out of gas. In Florida, people getting help as the hurricane's toll continues to rise. And President Bush issues a no-fly ultimatum to Saddam Hussein.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Tonight, sitting in for Tom is Catherine Currick.
Good evening. Andrew tonight is no longer a hurricane, but before it lost its punch, Louisiana was blasted by heavy rain and 150-mile-an-hour winds. And just as it did on Monday in Florida, Andrew hit Louisiana during the pre-dawn hours. While New Orleans missed the full fury of the storm, a wide area from Morgan City to Baton Rouge suffered massive damage. We have NBC's Robert Hager in Lafayette and Roger O'Neill in New Iberia. Bob, let's begin with you.
Katie, the storm took only hours to move through central Louisiana and its coast today, but residents here will be years getting over it. In Morgan City, the storm ripped the roof off a service station. In La Place, a tornado spawned by the hurricane demolished homes and businesses, leaving 1 dead and 30 injured. Troy Becknell escaped.
And I grabbed my wife and we started trying to get to the bathroom, and by that time the wall came down on top of us. My wife was trapped under me, and it just took a while, you know, we got out.
It was evident the storm called Andrew packed nearly the same punch it had delivered to Miami Monday. Here in Lafayette, 3,500 huddled in shelters, but as the wind grew more dangerous, many were awakened at 3 a.m.
We're too close to the glass, and we're going to move you over in this area across the way.
Move them to hallways with no glass. Good thing as dawn came, and with it, the full fury of the storm. At mid-morning, the center of the storm passed Lafayette, the eye moving just to the east. And then it was over. Relieved occupants of the shelters emerged
going home.
to assess the damage. What they saw was this. And this. And this. In the town of Houma, residences were badly damaged. Cliff Pittman's furniture store was a wreck. He spent the morning trying to protect what merchandise he has left under what he has left of his roof. But already the cleanup has started here. In the end, damage here will run in the billions of dollars, but it's not so expensive as in Miami and southern Florida. The area here was less populated, the wind not quite so strong. Los Angeles, Louisiana is hurting, but not as badly as southern Florida. Katie?
Thank you, Bob. Now to Roger O'Neill with the before, during, and after in the city of New Iberia. Roger?
It was a night, Katie, which just would not end. For those of us who were here, residents and reporters alike, it was a storm, the likes of which we have not seen before. This was the safest place to go, the high school.
This is his first, only one.
It would have been nice to be young again, not to know enough to worry. But with 1,800 others chased here by Andrew, there was a calm feeling. And for a while, the mood inside the New Iberia Senior High School mirrored the relative, if only temporary, calm of the approaching storm. But between 1 and 2 a.m., the hurricane came. And for the next 5 hours, it kept coming. At the Emergency Operations Center, they said the wind blew 120 miles an hour, with gusts to 140. Whatever it was enough to blow the roof off the school. And with it, the calm of this safe place.
Move down to the last corner. Be careful. Come on, y'all doing great. Good, good. Y'all gonna have to leave some of that stuff here. Bring the main thing.
In this town, at least, last night, it seemed wherever there were people, there was trouble. At the hotels along the highway, the locals filled up the rooms, and here, too, the roofs were blown off. At the Best Western, at the Holiday Inn. And just when it couldn't get any worse, it did. There was a natural gas leak, and already scared children got more scared.
We got a gas line bust. We need help. We're trying to get the hell out of here. That's what we're trying to do.
With almost everything broke in New Iberia, this gas station owner struck gold when he opened for business today. The power has been off for almost 18 hours and still is. But a rented generator turned on the pumps and the cash registers to take in all the money. And the fixing continues to go on in New Iberia as it does elsewhere in Louisiana. The storm did pass quickly once it finally passed. In fact, Katie, the sun even came out for just a little bit today.
All right, thanks, Roger. In Florida, the death toll from Andrew is now 15, and damage is estimated at $20 billion, almost twice that of the San Francisco earthquake 3 years ago. While it's just too early to estimate the damage in Louisiana, one thing is clear: Andrew was the most destructive natural disaster in American history. NBC's Noah Nelson reports on Florida after Andrew.
This is my family room and kitchen. All that's left.
For Ann Mitchell, the devastating reality of what she and her family have lost just sank in today. The Mitchells live in Country Walk, a once tidy Miami suburb ravaged by the hurricane.
After 30 years, this is all we have left.
Like 180,000 others in Florida, the Mitchells are now homeless. Their dream house and the things they cherished, like this grandfather clock, lie on the front lawn.
You have no idea what it's like to sit on a wall and pray. And that's the only room that was left intact. Really, I'm not this bad of a housekeeper.
A short distance away, a neighbor, Brenda Smith, jokes to keep from crying while surveying what her family has left.
Oh, God. Oh, I guess that doesn't mean anything anymore.
We had nothing to drink.
In South Florida, as shock begins to wear off, new emotions like anger and frustration are setting in.
Where are they to help us, the Americans, that pay the taxes, that do the things, that follow the rules, that help everybody else in the world? Where are they when we need the help?
Almost 600,000 families have no electric power. In some of the hardest hit areas, there is still no mail or telephone service, and people are wondering when the suffering will end. Supermarkets, those able to function, have reopened, but they are very few. Many people resent being told to wait.
I think that this is a very bad thing that
have to stand out in this line at 6 o'clock in the morning to get 2 bags of ice.
Those whose homes have been damaged or destroyed are having trouble reaching their insurance agents because of the thousands of claims being filed all at once.
It's time now to write the checks and get these people's lives back in order and get them some money so that they can start to rebuild.
People aren't the only homeless victims of the hurricane. At the Miami Zoo, one of the largest in the country, 300 birds are dead or missing, and dozens of animals are running free amid the destruction. Noah Nelson, NBC News, Miami.
CNN Headline News. I'm Lynn Russell. Andrew still is generating scares in the Gulf Coast area. Tornado and flood watches and warnings are in effect in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. Andrew has been downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm now, but it's still dumping heavy rains and generating winds of 50 miles an hour. It's currently centered 25 miles south-southwest of Natchez, Mississippi, moving north at about 8 miles an hour. President Bush is inspecting the hurricane damage. He's in Lafayette, Louisiana, which was hard hit when the storm made landfall this morning. He says the federal government will do all it can to help clean up and rebuild devastated areas, but he called on the country and the private sector for help. As we said, Lafayette, Louisiana experienced some of the worst damage from Andrew. Toria Tully is there now, we understand, with an alligator behind her with a report on today's activities. We'll understand if you move quickly.
Yes, you definitely do. In fact, I would say that the alligators and the water moccasins here are just as disappointed and as unhappy as the residents here. There's a lot of water. The rain has let up for the time being, but everything is very, very wet. We still have gusty winds coming through. Residents are coming back to this area. They are finding the high waters, as you see behind me, filled with alligators. They are also finding a lot of problems with their homes. And there is the possibility of threats from, as you said, tornadoes and the possibility of gusty winds. Southern Louisianans are assessing the damage caused by Hurricane Andrew, both in property as well as in injuries and loss of life. The town of Laplace got a double dose of trouble. Hurricane Andrew coming through spawned tornadoes. One man here was killed when his house collapsed on top of him. In nearby Lake Charles, residents thought they heard a tornado too, but it turned out to be the awesome power of the hurricane, one they won't soon forget.
It's as scary as I've ever been. The only hurricane I can remember before this one was Hurricane Danny and Hurricane Corman. That was the only two I can remember. But this one here, to me, was the worst one ever.
The wrath of Hurricane Andrew was evident mile after mile. Businesses were heavily damaged. In several towns, roofs were literally peeled off homes by the terrific force. Mobile homes parked in the Bayou country suffered the most, it seems. One family said they didn't know what they were up against.
Just bought new things and all, and we strapped the trailer down as good as we could, but it's still blown half of it away.
Late this afternoon, President Bush came to survey the stricken area. The damage here, combined with the devastation in Miami, makes Hurricane Andrew the costliest natural disaster in American history. Now, as we said, we are in the Bayou country of Louisiana. A lot of what you see here, they're used to. They're used to these hurricanes that have come through. But they say, as the man said earlier, this one is about the worst they've seen in a long time. In fact, many of the residents who are coming back to this area are devastated. Their homes are gone. Those who do have homes still standing are finding that they are missing electricity and water. And we've talked to some utilities companies. They say it's going to be anywhere up to 3 weeks before everything is back to normal here. Reporting live from Lafayette, Louisiana, I'm Toria Tully. Back to you, Lynn.
Before you run away from the alligator there, let me ask you, is it considered perhaps too early for the residents to go back home in light of the high water and the water moccasins?
Well, I think what is going to convince everybody that it's okay is the fact that President Bush came down here. Now, I don't know if he's not afraid of alligators and snakes, but he did tour the area. He is here, and he said it is safe. He said that it's certainly devastated. People can come back. It's probably going to be unpleasant, uncomfortable, and they do have to watch out for the high waters. But as far as a threat of tornadoes or floods are concerned, it's probably safe to come back right now.
Thank you, Toria. In Florida, where Andrew struck on Monday, many items remain scarce. Some Miami residents formed lines for bags of ice today. Others cooked food on outdoor fires. But there's little food to go around. Senator Bob Graham estimates 180,000 Floridians lost their homes to the hurricane. Power is still out for more than 1 million people. The death toll in Florida is now 15, with miles of rubble yet to search.
Bonnie Anderson has their story.
So we have to improvise.
They are longtime Homestead residents, a family of police officers whose lives have been dedicated to serving the public. Their lives are now in a shambles. Still, they're worried most about their neighbors.
When you take a ride out, all the devastation really gets to you. So I thank God I'm still here. My family is safe, and we'll make it.
Major Jim Radizak and his wife Bernice rode out the hurricane at their daughter, Officer Becky Brown's nearby home. Her husband, a mounted officer, stayed with his horses at the police stable. The family says it took pure muscle to keep the storm from breaking down the front door.
We were home for about 45 minutes.
On the floor.
Seemed like 10 hours. Because we were both tired. The water's coming in, we're slipping backwards.
It was very frightening. The most frightening thing I ever went through in my whole life.
I was just, trying to pump yourself up and just going, no, you can't come in,
But much of the storm did, tearing off part of the roof. Becky spends much of her time now scavenging for boards, for anything they can use for repairs. The job, she says, is daunting.
What should I do first? Because there's so much to do, you don't know what's the most important thing to do. Is it the food? Is it the water? Is it the shelter? Should I, do the house first? Should I put the roof on?
In the living room, police weapons are loaded and ready. Looters, they say, will not take what little they or their neighbors have left.
With all the looting, I just don't understand why people are out there taking stuff when, there's been such a tragedy.
For Jim and Bernice Radizak, the extent of their personal tragedy wasn't clear until they went to their own home, what was left of it.
Total devastation. It's unbelievable that you have so much one day and the next day it's all gone.
It was the home of their dreams, bought 4 years ago with a lifetime of savings from a police officer's salary.
This is what was our living room.
What the storm didn't blow away was destroyed. For the Radizaks, it was truly a day of heartbreak.
This is our guest room.
Just unbelievable. In a few hours, what can be destroyed, what you work years for.
I've cried and cried, but I know we have to get on with this, and there's probably people that are worse off than we are. And as soon as we get ourselves together, I know I'm going to be out there trying to help someone else.
Because you work hard all your life. We're like Bernie said again, we're not the only ones in that boat. Some people worse off than we are. At least we got our loved ones right here. And we will help other people.
But they say it may take the rest of their lives to recover emotionally. Bonnie Anderson, CNN, Homestead, Florida.
Insurance companies are being swamped with claims as the damage toll from Hurricane Andrew rises in Florida and Louisiana. Emergency management officials in Florida estimate damage to be at least $15 billion. But some in the insurance industry predict insured losses will be less than the $4.2 billion in claims from 1989's Hurricane Hugo. Analysts are saying that with $160 billion in surplus capital, the insurance industry is prepared to cope with the flood of claims from Andrew. With their lives devastated by Andrew, some residents of South Florida are still waiting for help. CNN's Charles Jacob talked to those trying to cope in some of the hardest hit areas.
Johnny Simpson, his wife, and 9 children survived barely. Their roof is gone. They sleep under the sky or in their van.
We haven't gotten any word concerning anything concerning food, water, shelter, medication, nothing.
Nothing from the government at all?
Nothing from the government at all.
Convoys of National Guard troops snake through South Florida's devastation. Their job is to help keep order.
A lot of kids need medication like her. She needs a treatment 3 times a day, and I don't have a generator or nothing to plug it up to.
But they've ended up providing everything from medical aid to food to water, but some people wonder if anybody's in charge.
There's nobody making plans to bring water to these people that we can tell, because we've got water trailers sitting over here. More than one. One will supply us. Take the other one, put it behind a truck, tell them where to be, and we'll bring water to them.
People all over this storm-blasted area say the same thing. They have no food, no water, no medicine, and no idea where aid from the state or the federal government is.
Please don't drink the water, okay? It has not been sterilized.
A few blocks from the National Guard headquarters in the Cutler Ridge neighborhood, a volunteer group of Florida Baptists is distributing food and water. They say they haven't seen hide nor hair of the government. Any government.
The only government people I've seen here is the National Guard, and they were handing out donuts this morning and handing out sea rations this afternoon. And as far as government aid, quote unquote, no, I haven't seen any at all.
President Bush has pledged $50 million in federal disaster aid and has also promised to create several thousand local jobs cleaning up the mess. As for delays, almost 3 days after the storm hit,
it's very hard to get in and put facilities up and get them manned when the support elements for people that you're bringing in, the buildings themselves are damaged, and power is not up.
And while official agencies say they're trying, people in this destroyed area are also trying, apparently, on their own. For people like Johnny Simpson and his family, and for thousands of others, promises of government help remain just that, promises. And promises don't help feed 9 kids or help keep the rain out. Charles Jaco, CNN, Gould, Florida.
The first pictures are finally available from the place Hurricane Andrew hit first, the Bahamas. The storm left at least 3 people dead last Sunday as it roared through the outer island of Eleuthera, about 225 miles east of Miami. Dozens of homes were leveled or badly damaged. But other tourist areas like Nassau and Freeport were spared Andrew's full force. Also, the Bahamas' major airports are open.
After Hurricane Andrew, it's gone but not forgotten. In the Persian Gulf, the no-fly zone's first day is without incident. And in Los Angeles, street shootings now deadlier than ever.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Tonight, sitting in for Tom is Catherine Currick.
Good evening. The numbers are staggering. More than 800,000 homes and businesses in Louisiana and Florida without power or water. Officials are declaring Hurricane Andrew the worst natural disaster in terms of dollar damage in American history. NBC's Roger O'Neill in Louisiana. How bad is it?
Well, it's bad, but it's not as bad as Florida for sure, Katie. But in some Louisiana towns tonight, officials are urging people not to come back. There's no food, water, or electricity. It's a plea being ignored. On Highway 90, southbound toward the Gulf of Mexico, tens of thousands of people were headed home today. To what, they did not know. Hurricane Andrew was an indiscriminate wrecker when it hit. In Morgan City, where the eye of the storm came ashore, a seawall broke the surging waters of the Gulf and saved the downtown. But just a few blocks from the water's edge, there was lots of damage. The wind tore away the roof of Ed Mayen's place. The rain ruined everything that was inside. Alan Hawkins was one of the few people who never left. He was afraid of looters. Today, he's afraid of hurricanes.
I would recommend it when they say leave, leave. Because it was frightening.
The electric company says it could be Monday before electricity is restored across the state. 600 workers from outside Louisiana are in the state now helping, but those 120-mile-an-hour winds cause an awful lot of damage. New Iberia is still in the dark. And with the power likely to stay off for several more days, ice became a commodity people had to have.
Gotta save the meat and the baby's milk, right?
Instead of selling fresh fish, the owner of Gator's Seafood was driving to Baton Rouge, 50 miles away, to bring back truckloads of ice. In a small town, when there's trouble at home, neighbors help each other. But there have been reports of price gouging.
Roughly about $1,600, $1,500.
From this rented truck parked along the side of a road, 2 men from Florida were trying to sell chainsaws and generators. They said at below cost, but none of the 20 or 30 people we saw ask ended up buying.
I think they're ripping us off. You said your price went down the road? Yeah, down the road is $300 cheaper. Same generator? Exactly the same generator.
In some neighborhoods, most of the homes are still livable, but that's not the case in the tiny fishing and resort village of Sycamore Point. James Faulkner is one of the old-timers here.
This is really terrible, really. This is the worst I've seen since Hurricane Audrey.
Just a little while ago, the state's agriculture commissioner said he thinks the damage to the state sugarcane crop will top $1 billion. Katie?
Thank you, Roger. NBC News has learned President Bush will announce that several thousand federal troops will be sent to Miami to help in the relief efforts. In Miami's Dade County, the anger of Andrew has given way to the anger of the people. 250,000 there are homeless tonight. 1 out of every 8 houses in the area destroyed. NBC's Noah Nelson reports.
Tempers explode over what has become a precious commodity here, ice.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
For victims of the hurricane, shortages of almost everything, long lines, and 90-degree temperatures have frayed patience and stamina. While waiting in line for ice, this woman passed out. But today, in one hard-hit area, a truck showed up with tons of ice. And for a little while, there was enough to go around.
It ticked me off to see somebody charge $5 a bag. I mean, that made me so mad I wanted to kill.
Don Kaiser from Bradenton, Florida, said he knew people would be in need. So he borrowed a friend's truck, got some ice from a local restaurant, and drove the truck down. He arrived early this morning. People loaded up with ice in anything they could carry. There was even enough to give those in line a cool sip while waiting.
All the same one. People in need. It ain't the different kind of faces. Today there's no black, no white. They all need ice, they need food, clothing, and now they need some shelter.
Volunteers made homeless by the hurricane pitched in to unload the ice.
Andrew gave everybody, a bad Christmas. So this is my Christmas to everybody.
Kaiser says he'll go back to Bradenton, get another truckload, and drive down more ice. He says sharing is the only way people can get through times like these.
I hope one of these guys, if it destroys my house, please bring me some ice and some water.
Noah Nelson, NBC News, Miami.
NBC's chief financial correspondent Mike Jensen is in the hardest hit area, Homestead in South Florida. Mike, how are the people there rebuilding their lives?
Katie, today the insurance agents hit town handing out checks, but for every homeowner who got one, every business, there were 1,000 who didn't.
This was unbelievable when I came through the back door and saw that the roof was gone and quite a few of the walls had been knocked out.
I see we've lost. John Ninehouse is one of the lucky few. His insurance company handed him a check for $100,000. You've been to natural disasters all over the country.
Yes.
You were at Hurricane Hugo.
Yes.
How does this compare?
This seems to be a lot worse than Hugo. When I saw Hugo, I was overwhelmed, and this is just much, much worse.
Victor Bullis knows his gas station convenience store was wiped out. He owes the bank $1 million, and he hasn't even been able to get his insurance agent on the phone. What does a pump like this cost? Just one pump?
About between $15,000 to $18,000, each one.
And you've got 5 of them. Bullis says he may not rebuild because he may not have any customers. They live here, or they did. Now they're lining up to file insurance claims, and many of them say they won't get enough money to rebuild. For now, they're just trying to survive. This is about 1/3 of a line of people waiting to buy staples. That's a problem. And so is housing, including boats. A lot of people here live on boats. Thousands of them were damaged, and many of them simply disappeared.
We don't have any insurance in our boat. Our boat was our home. We lived on our boat.
To make things worse, some merchants are gouging, jacking up prices on things like generators and roofing, making life that much tougher for an estimated 63,000 families in southern Florida whose homes have been destroyed. Katie, as you said earlier, by most estimates, this is the worst natural disaster in American history. But here in Florida, the real tragedy is the personal one. That is the one that you see on every street and in front of every house.
Okay, thanks, Mike Jensen.
WFTV Orlando. Live from Channel 9, Central Florida's news leader. Bob Opsahl, Marla Weech, Danny Trainer's weather, and Pat Clark with sports. This is Eyewitness News Tonight.
South Florida is a devastated landscape where desperate people are doing desperate things to stay alive.
But President Bush has ordered in military troops now to head off what was becoming a survival of the fittest mentality.
Good evening. The damage is done in South Florida, but the suffering continues in the wake of Hurricane Andrew.
The major problem is not a lack of food or water, it's a lack of organization. But that could now be changing. Things are changing quickly down there, and not always for the better. Reporter David Clue of our Florida News Network has much more now, live from the heart of some of the damage in the city of Miami. David?
One of the biggest problems here about an organized relief effort is the sheer magnitude of the situation. That situation, of course, supplying all the basic needs for survival to 250,000 people. It's not that it can't be done or that people aren't trying to do it. They are. We're seeing that every day. It's just that no one knows where that relief is going.
Let's keep the line moving. Get some more people up here.
It's a story told at every distribution center in the county.
No food, no water, no nothing. They haven't been in that area yet to give us nothing. That's why we're traveling around trying to get some now.
But we're 4 days into a very significant disaster, probably the greatest single natural catastrophe that this nation has seen, quite frankly. $20 billion worth of damages. And what we have is bureaucratic gridlock right now.
With decimation, hunger, thirst, homelessness, and despair so widespread, it is a wonder anything is getting done in South Dade County. It is, but it's anything but organized. These clothes were in fact left on the pavement at a water distribution site. People are getting them if they're lucky enough to wander over here. These guys from Florida Power came from Melbourne to deliver food and ice. Their decision to stop here was guesswork. And for those who finally reach an area where people are in need, too often they are told, go somewhere else.
I just drove about 50 miles here. I don't know where else to go. I'm lost.
The National Guard, which has its orders, says based on the limited manpower, this disorganization is the best plan available.
The logistics involved are phenomenal. Not only do you have to protect the people and make sure that the system is distributed accordingly, and you were trying to make it to the areas that are most hit the hardest, but as it stands right now, this is the best system we have.
I live around here.
Okay.
There's nothing in my area. No food
there's
at
a
all.
food distribution. Most of the food and emergency supplies that reach South Florida are getting to those who need them. The problem is the same those who need them are getting them every time.
I came here yesterday. I had to go back with a van full.
Why?
They're sending people here. They don't have the facility or the manpower to get this stuff out.
Now, one of the most common complaints we're getting from the victims of this hurricane, this disaster here in Dade County, is that President Bush all along has had no problem sending aircraft to southern Iraq to shoot down Iraqi jets if they cross that line. And these airplanes cost more, and the effort is better organized than anything he has ever thought about sending down here. Hopefully, the effort to send additional troops that came down today will change all of that. This is David Clue reporting live from Miami. Now back to the studio.
Well, the best of luck to those folks in Miami. Thank you, David. Last Sunday, we told you about the National Guardsmen leaving here in Orlando and heading for Miami.
Tonight, reporter Jack Hambrick caught up with some guardsmen from Sanford in Florida City. He is standing by live with more. Jack?
Well, Marla, there are about 4,000 National Guard troops down here right now. More are on the way, but they've been taking a lot of criticism, as you just heard. Tonight, we caught up with some guardsmen from Central Florida.
That's the last load right now.
Up until tonight, tensions in Leisure City have been running high. This is one of the few relief centers in the area, and it's just beginning to get supplies. And this is where guardsmen from the 124th in Sanford are on duty tonight. Ken Odom is from Orlando. From your perspective coming down here, what do you think?
It's a disaster. Looks like a war zone.
Hurricane victims scavenged through piles of clothing and boxes of food. As soon as it comes off the truck, it's carried away. It's disorderly, unorganized, but guardsmen can do little but watch. Sergeant Brian Fancher from Daytona Beach.
Well, they don't have much here. During the day, you can look around. There's no houses hardly standing in this area. It's running a little rough, but we're trying to do the best we can do.
Now, at this point, folks down here need as much as they can get. We're talking the military, the National Guard. They need anything at this point. I really think one of the next stories you're going to see, if they don't get help soon, is a lot of frustration. And what are the psychological and the emotional effects on these people as they continue to live their lives without food, water, and other things? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Bob, Marla?
Desperation could turn to some real violence down there.
Desperate people do desperate things, they say.
All right, thank you, Jack. Well, one thing that Hurricane Andrew is doing is causing people to become more aware of how to carry out disaster procedures during a time of need. Tonight, the local Red Cross was swamped with people wanting to learn how to do that and wanting to get involved. A seminar on disaster services was packed. It was so full, in fact, a second class was scheduled for tomorrow. The Red Cross holds the course on a regular basis, but organizers say it's usually never this crowded.
Talk about putting aside your differences for the sake of the common good. All 3 television stations in West Palm Beach went together tonight for a 2-hour telethon to raise money for neighboring Dade County. Station officials say they raised over $1 million in pledges. The telethon featured TV news reports from devastated areas of Dade County, and the telethon was hosted by weather forecasters at the West Palm Beach TV stations. Most of Palm Beach County suffered only minor damage from Hurricane Andrew.
And if you're looking for ways to help hurricane victims, a special panel at Channel 9 can put you in touch with the right people.
In just a few moments, we'll show you the toll-free numbers to call our hurricane hotline. But first, Jane Wattrell joins us now live from our newsroom to tell you more about its purpose. Jane?
Well, Bob and Marla, as you well know, since Hurricane Andrew struck, our phone lines in the Channel 9 newsroom have been jammed with viewers who want to help. So we put together this hotline to help link up local people with the hurricane victims' needs. The phone lines are barely open and already a barrage of calls. Central Floridians who want to donate money, goods, and services to hurricane victims. Callers who want to know who will take their donations.
They want to help. They're not quite sure how. And they're also concerned about the distribution efforts. That's been a main concern too, but there's a lot of outpouring.
Address is 5.
Hotline volunteers plug in callers to service organizations and take down information for those who need special attention. Like these nurses who called the hotline. They're among dozens of medical professionals moved by these pictures of Andrew's devastation. Doctors and nurses who want to donate their time so Dade County colleagues can go home.
There's a lot of people down there working hard, and the general feeling that if this happened to be Orlando that was devastated, that somebody from Miami would be doing the same thing and just returning the favor.
I'm sure they have put a lot of their personal problems and what's going on in their own lives behind them, and they need some time to pull themselves together, you know, and being able to help other people is what nursing's all about.
Now the hotline will be matching up those nurses to a Miami area hospital, and here are the numbers, so grab a pencil, but don't call until after noon tomorrow. The numbers are 1-800-732-WFTV and 1-800-832-WFTV. And Bob and Marla, the number of people who want to help the hurricane victims really is heartwarming. People want to reach out, but they want to know exactly what to do, and hopefully our hotline will help. Back to you.
All right, yes, let's put their efforts to the best use. Thank you, Jane. Well, law enforcement. Today in Castleberry, 3 trucks loaded with donated supplies left for the Miami area. These items are all for police officers and their families affected by Hurricane Andrew. And Castleberry was not alone. Police in Winter Springs and in Longwood have also started collection drives for Miami area police families.
There's even more relief on the way tonight to the victims of Hurricane Andrew. This time, the aid is in the form of housing.
Most people don't know that the federal government keeps a supply of mobile homes for people who need housing in the time of crisis. And as Joan Conley shows us, the first of many mobile homes moved through Central Florida this evening.
These are not your average mobile homes, but then again, they're not designed to be. They're specially equipped for use by people who have nowhere else to stay. The Florida Highway Patrol is providing the escort.
Of course, trailers are bulky to move, so we're kind of helping them get down the highway to Miami.
This is good practice for the Highway Patrol because they're going to be escorting 1,700 trailers this month. That's how many will be leaving their storage facility in Georgia, then transported south across Florida. Because the trailers are so big, already toll gates have been opened up specifically to let the emergency relief vehicles through.
To make sure that all of the trailers and the heavy equipment can get through, they've widened the toll booths down there. They've taken down some guardrail to facilitate them. So just about anything can get down there that needs to.
The only problem highway officials anticipated was the weight of the big mobile homes on the turnpike bridges, but they say the structures are pretty tough and should hold. After all, these roadways will be used by a lot of relief vehicles over the next several months as they race to make life more bearable for our neighbors to the south. In Orange County, Joan Conley, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
By the way, you may recall that the tolls on the turnpike have been suspended since the disaster struck. However, tomorrow morning, those tolls resume for everyone except emergency vehicles.
The relief efforts in South Florida suffered a tragic loss today. 2 people died in the crash of a small plane that was carrying relief supplies. A twin-engine Cessna reportedly lost power as it took off from North Perry Airport in Broward County. The aircraft hit one house and then bounced onto the roof of a second, as you can see. Nobody in the houses was hurt, but 2 people on the plane were killed, and a 3rd passenger is now in the hospital in critical condition. Price gouging has become common tonight in parts of South Florida, and that immoral money-making mentality is apparently affecting businesses in other parts of the state as well. People are calling the Attorney General's office now, complaining about the price of lumber. In some spots, the price of plywood has gone up 35% and more just this week. So the governor signed an executive order this week making price gouging for necessities a violation of Florida's unfair trade laws, and violators could be fined up to $10,000.
In Louisiana, government officials are still trying to size up the extent of the damage from Andrew. Parts of the Bayou country look much like South Florida tonight. Andrew is now just a strong rainstorm, dumping rain on Tennessee and the southeastern United States. But as a hurricane, it ripped across Louisiana with winds as strong as 160 miles an hour. Whole neighborhoods are flattened. Amazingly, 1 person was killed.
Where does the weather go from here? Well, Danny Trainer's next with the AccuWeather forecast.
And there's more news to come as well. The jury in a local murder trial visited the crime scene today. Details are coming up.
Plus, the crew of the next space shuttle is getting ready for its history-making mission. We'll tell you how.
But first, here are tonight's winning lottery numbers. The cash 3 numbers are 222. The play 4 numbers are 5747.
In ravaged South Florida, desperate appeals for help.
Me and my family, we've lost everything we had in the ranch in the Rosemont area over here. We have nothing.
And bitter complaints over the federal response after Hurricane Andrew.
I'm thoroughly disgusted with whoever should be in charge of it.
Now they're sending in the troops.
We've directed the Department of Defense to supply comprehensive assistance to the affected areas.
Our goal is to have forces on the ground and operating by the morning of the 28th, tomorrow morning.
Tonight, the federal relief effort is cranked up.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppelman, reporting from Washington, Cokie Roberts.
Federal troops to the rescue in Florida tonight, finally. In a major turnaround from the tepid response so far, President Bush has ordered up to 5,000 soldiers to the hurricane-devastated state. At this hour, troops are leaving Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to bring food, medicine, and order to the survivors of Hurricane Andrew's winds and water. The announcement of the mobilization came from the Pentagon tonight after a day of bureaucratic finger-pointing. Local government agencies blame state and federal governments for the failure to act, and different federal agencies blamed each other. Floridians angrily accused everyone in government of ignoring their plight, of being ready to help strangers in far-off lands, but not lending a hand here at home, of abandoning them to the Florida heat without shelter or water. As the state's death toll from the hurricane rose from 15 to 22, the director of Dade County Emergency Management, Kate Hall, exploded. Where the hell is the cavalry? Tonight, it's on its way in C-130 transport planes instead of on horseback. Once the decision was made, things moved very fast. At 6:30 p.m., President Bush paused on the campaign trail in Toledo, Ohio, to announce his decision to deploy troops.
We've directed the Department of Defense to supply comprehensive assistance to the affected areas, including mobile tents, food, water, field kitchens, and I've also directed them to supply whatever transportation is necessary, including aircraft and helicopters to fulfill that vital mission.
At 8:30 p.m., the Pentagon briefers were ready with specifics.
If I'm a hungry person in South Miami tomorrow morning, where should I go?
I'd go look for one of those mobile kitchen teams.
But how can they find out where they are?
We'll have to set up and get and obviously we've got the problem of getting the information out as to where those mobile kitchens are going to be. I would look first in the Florida City and the Homestead area.
General, the estimates are that 1 million people are without power in South Florida. How many of those people can these 4 generators serve?
4 generators are designed to power small power grids or facilities like hospitals.
This listed that you've given us tonight of 2,000 to 5,000 troops, does that fully satisfy the request that has been made by the White House?
This task force I defined is between 2,000 and 5,000. If there are more folks, we're going to do the job. Sending 5,000 guys and gals that can go down and do a pretty good job, I think, is significant. Does it meet the total requirement? I can't address that.
And within minutes after that statement, troops were on the way. This is what we know at this moment about the new federal relief effort tonight, as announced by the Pentagon. Between 2,000 and 5,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, will be in Florida by tomorrow morning. Other equipment includes 3 air medical evacuation helicopters, 4 750-kilowatt generators, 20 mobile kitchen trailers to serve meals in the disaster zone. Already on the ground or on their way tonight, advance teams, along with medical, technical, security, and search and rescue specialists. Supplies, everything from food and beverages to pillows, are coming by way of a supply barge from the naval base at Guantanamo, Cuba. It was Monday when Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida. In the 3 days since, the situation has steadily deteriorated. With the massive and urgent demand for necessities, the basics, in some cases, sold to the highest bidder. Tales of gasoline for $7.50 a gallon and a bag of ice for $10. Al Dale in Miami has been bringing us this sorry story.
Tonight's announcement that the troops were on the way came only after days of frustration, which turned into anger at what victims felt was failure of the government to respond to their needs.
I'm amazed that we did not get troops in here as quick as we got them in Saudi Arabia. We haven't had, first 48 hours, no one made any attempt to bring in water or food, either one.
Nothing. No one has come here to give us anything.
Local officials, too, have charged that the Federal Emergency Management Agency has been dragging its feet in providing equipment and manpower.
We have a catastrophic disaster. Please come down and help us. We are looking at hours away from more casualties if we don't get this food in and this water.
Federal officials blamed local logistical problems for delays and suggested that the county had failed to ask for full-scale federal response.
I want everybody out there to know that that is patently a lie. And Dade County is getting caught in the middle of something. And we're being victimized by those agencies that are supposed to be moving in here to assist us.
Residents who lost their homes and have little or no food and water are bitter.
I'm thoroughly disgusted with whoever should be in charge of it.
I haven't been by here yet to see if anybody's all right or nothing.
These residents of the town of Perrine, not far from Miami, have watched helicopters go over, but have yet to see anyone from any governmental agency. The sign they put up tells the seriousness of their plight.
As soon as we put that sign there, we have our water, we have food. Not from the government, just, for the, people, from the north, Happy birthday to you.
A block away, the misery of Hurricane Andrew's devastation failed to stop a birthday party. But questions of why the government took so long to gear up were on the partygoers' minds.
The faster we get help, the better. If this government that's so great can help countries at war so quickly, I think they can help us a little faster. So, if I can relay a message to the president, You know, stop caring about the people out there and start caring about your own people. We're your people, not them.
It appears that the message has gotten through. This is Al Dale for Nightline in Homestead, Florida.
Troops leaving Fort Bragg tonight had a chance to talk with some reporters.
This evening we've got one aircraft, or rather two aircraft that will be flying out of here with some kitchen units, additional equipment, kitchen units, mobile kitchen trailers, cots, things of that nature will be flying down.
It's going to be a big effort. You know, we're all combining together, and we're just down there to do what we can to support the people down there and to help clean up and you know, and assist them in whatever they need.
You don't worry about not being able to take your weapons?
I'm slightly worried than I am. Other than that, all I'm here to do is my job. That's it.
We have water supplies and food that we'll be sending down there to take care of our troops also.
We turn now to ABC Pentagon correspondent Bob Zelnick. Bob, you've heard all of these people saying, too long, why isn't anybody here? What took so long for the military to decide to send troops?
Well, Koki, the Pentagon says that in situations of natural disasters, they are a support agency, not the lead agency. It's up to FEMA to coordinate things. It's up to FEMA to request assistance. It's up to FEMA to tell the Pentagon that it needs troops and other logistical support. That didn't happen, at least not in any recognizable quantity, until late this afternoon. So the Pentagon, until late this afternoon, provided very little, a couple of meals ready to eat, some logistical support, technical advice. But it was only when Transportation Secretary Card reported back to President Bush that the disaster was far worse than anyone had estimated, and that local facilities were overwhelmed by it and more federal help was needed, that President Bush contacted the Undersecretary of Defense, Don Atwood, and told him to swing in motion. And from late this afternoon, things have begun to move. It bears note that Secretary Cheney himself, who's very efficient and very politically astute, is on vacation this week. It's quite possible that had he been in town, the Pentagon would have been more proactive and less reactive.
Bob, quickly, first of all, FEMA is, of course, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. There was a report earlier tonight that they had asked the Pentagon for help and it wasn't forthcoming. Is that true?
Well, it's very difficult for us to judge what's true and what's false. All I can do as the Pentagon correspondent at this time is to report what Pentagon officials themselves are saying. They are saying there was no request for more help than they provided. Had there been the request for the logistics, for the food serving trailers, for the medical support, it would have been underway.
Thank you very much, Bob Zelnick. When we come back, we'll be joined by the Bush administration's point man for coordinating disaster relief in Miami, by a Florida official involved in the recovery, and by one of the people who've been trying to cope with the disastrous situation.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Allstate.
They keep secrets here. Information big business wants to keep quiet. What's inside these files could save your life, but you'll never know. 2020 Friday.
Andrew Card is President Bush's Secretary of Transportation. He's been in Miami trying to coordinate the federal relief effort. Larry Hawkins is a commissioner in hard-hit Dade County. He's among the people there who've been sending out pleas for more federal help. Both gentlemen join us from our Miami bureau and from Florida City, a first-hand account of what relief is needed from one of the victims, Jerry Spivak, a grocer. Starting with you, Secretary Card, you got to Miami this morning. First of all, why did it take so long to get to Florida when you're hearing all of these complaints now about it's too late, too little too late coming in?
Well, first of all, the president came very early, right after the storm hit. I then was appointed by the president to coordinate the federal government's response to this disaster, and I went yesterday to Louisiana with President Bush, and then immediately this morning came to Florida. Governor Childs and I met this morning. That was the first time that he requested federal assistance in the form of federal troops, and we were able to act very quickly on the governor's request to move forward. Our interest is in helping people. There are people who are in desperate need of basic services right now: food, water, and shelter. And we want to get that service to them as quickly as possible, and it's going to happen tonight and tomorrow morning.
Commissioner Hawkins, you're one of the people who's been complaining that it hasn't been coming in fast enough.
There's no question about it. We knew what generally we thought we knew what was going to happen 2 days before the hurricane hit. Monday morning, we asked for state help. We asked for federal help. And it's by the grace of God and the good auspices of the people of Dade County and other parts of Florida and other parts of the country that we don't have a bigger disaster than we have. This is the largest single natural disaster in the history of the United States, and for the federal government to wait 4 days before they can get anything on the ground is really unconscionable from my perspective.
Why do you think it happened?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things, and I don't want to get into, because I agree with the Secretary. I'm in the same business that he's in at this point, which is getting relief to people. I think Congressman Fasell may have said it best this afternoon in a public meeting that all of the political figures who needed to get their fingers in the pie and be told about the situation all got to say what they wanted to say and be seen on television. And but the bottom line is we needed help down here, and we still do need help down here on a massive scale. I'm not sure whether 5,000 troops is going to be enough. The Secretary and I were just talking prior to coming on. This is a devastation that I had never seen before, and having served in Vietnam, I just tell you that you have to see it physically with your eye to believe the devastation and the human tragedy that has befallen this community. And I also can say that if the eye of the hurricane had hit 10 miles further north, and Key Biscayne would have looked like Florida City, which is probably Dade County's poorest city, and North Miami Beach, the Miami Beach hotels, or downtown Miami, you would have seen that type of thing on the national news. We would have had help probably the next day. Unfortunately.
Let me bring in Jerry Spivak here, who is a grocer in Florida City. What do you think about that, Mr. Spivak? Do you think that if it had been another community other than your community that would have been helped sooner?
I don't know if that's the reason. I would tend to think that it's probably lack of experience. This is a disaster that has never occurred before, and it's very difficult to handle something new when there's no experience behind you. And I think that's where the problem lies.
But Secretary Card, coming back to that, one of the things that struck me tonight in listening to the Pentagon briefing was how ready they were, in a way, that they had the right kinds of mobile kitchens, the right kinds of engineering forces to bring in to clear the debris. I mean, this could have started a couple of days ago.
Well, clearly, we have a military force that is ready to meet this demand, and we've called on them to help us. But we could not move forward with federal troops until the governor of Florida made the request. He made the request this morning. We acted on that request very, very quickly, coordinating with state and local government. Right now, we're addressing the problem. That's what's important. We have people who desperately need help. This is a terrible situation. People are really hurting, and tomorrow they're going to start to get real assistance. It's a lot of work. This will not be over in a matter of days or weeks or even months. This is a horrific problem that has to be solved by the whole nation pulling together, and President Bush has commanded that happen, and he's led right now a federal effort to bring a response that is important, timely, and it's going to address the basic needs. Okay. That's what we're all trying to do.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Governor Childs requested assistance, not Army assistance, but requested assistance from FEMA 3.5 days ago. And that assistance should have been communicated, and I'm not familiar with the Washington situation and how they work, and the Secretary is correct. He asked for extra military assistance today, but he asked 3 days ago, 3.5 days ago, as we asked 4 days ago, for federal assistance that was not coming. And again, I say, if it wasn't for the people around this country who've sent money, clothes, flown in, helped, it has been a total community effort that has kept these people literally from dying.
Okay, we'll continue this discussion in a minute. Back now with our discussion on new federal relief for South Florida. Jerry Spivak, you are in Florida City. You have a grocery store there. Is it operating? Is your grocery store?
Yes, it is. It's not a grocery store. It's like a little takeout food restaurant type of thing. I've been fortunate enough to be able to acquire a generator, so I'm able to open and service the community a little bit.
Able to get food?
Yes, I do. I ran up to Miami today and bought quite a bit.
Well, now you have a rare opportunity to speak for yourself and all of your friends who have been put in a terrible situation there. You have the Secretary of Transportation ready to listen to you. What would you like to say to him or ask him?
Well, I'd like to see him set forth on a building program, because that's where I think the necessities are going to lie in the long-term rebuilding of the community. I think the short-term thing of the donations and the food and the water are falling into place. But it's going to be a real challenge to see the community be rebuilt.
What about that, Secretary Card? Is there any ability for long-term rebuilding? Do you have the resources to do this kind of thing?
We're going to take the resources and commit them to solving this problem. It's a very serious problem. First, we want to get the basic problems addressed, the food and the water and the shelter, and the Army will be there tomorrow morning to help to see that is happening. We also have a terrific volunteer force, the American Red Cross, and today I met with volunteers from North Carolina and Alabama and Georgia who are down here helping the people of South Florida. So there's a great spirit of cooperation in this country that's helping to make a difference. But we do have to rebuild these communities, and it's going to take a long time. And we'll start with the individuals, next we'll move to the families, and we want to see those communities come back. And it will require a concerted effort on the part of a lot of people, not just the people in the federal government, the people in local government and state government, but also people from all across this country. And I think you're going to find that it will happen. President Bush has provided decisive leadership to help call attention to the problem and help to find a solution. And that's what we're going to have to work together to make sure happens.
Commissioner Hawkins, we heard earlier tonight a report where the head of the Red Cross, Elizabeth Dole, talked about 229 shelters, and your local emergency management person there, Kate Hale, said that's about 200 more shelters than I know about. Is there a breakdown in communication here? Are there claims being made that you can't substantiate?
Well, the Red Cross is a good organization, has done a lot of good things. The biggest hole in this entire operation, from my perspective, in the manager's perspective, I believe, has been the Red Cross. They've got about 25 shelters at this point on a max. Most of those by volunteers. I don't know where Secretary Dole is talking about the shelters, but they are not in South Dade. They are not in Dade County. They are not they're not serving people, and they're not part of the solution.
Right now, you know now that these troops are arriving, maybe 5,000 of them. Is that enough? What is your sort of worst-case scenario for your county right now?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I think the troops, the most important thing is public safety right now. We are and have been afraid that many people will start taking the law into their own hands. There has been some looting, but it has been sporadic because the shock of the event itself is still with us. I'm worried personally about the aftershock, and the Secretary makes a good point. We have to be in this for the long haul. Both local government, state government, and national government has to be in this for the along with the private sector.
And do you have the faith that they will be in there for the long haul? That the federal government is there to stay?
The FEMA office that is located in Charleston, South Carolina, has been there for over 2.5 years, and they're still there. So I hope that they will make that type of commitment to this community.
This is after Hugo.
That's after Hugo, and they're still there 2.5 years later. My question is there enough money to be talking about? You're talking about up to $50 billion, the largest.
And we don't have much time, so Secretary Card, is there enough money?
I think there is. I don't think it's going to be $50 billion, but it will be an awful lot of money. Some of that money will come through insurance policies that are in effect, but the federal government has a commitment to make sure these communities come back to life, and it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of team effort, no finger-pointing, solutions.
On that note, well, thank you all. Jerry Spivak, Larry Hawkins, and Secretary Andrew Card. We'll be back in a moment.
Thank you.
Former First Ladies and those who want to be. Then why being gay could become illegal in Oregon. Here on Good Morning America.
Later on World News Now, more on the massive effort to sustain life after Hurricane Andrew. That's our report for tonight. I'm Cokie Roberts in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
If you wish a videocassette version of Nightline, the cost is $14.98 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. If you wish a printed transcript, please send $4 to 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.